The wedding was supposed to save her life. Instead, it became her greatest humiliation. Elena Carter stood at the altar in a borrowed white dress, abandoned in front of 200 witnesses. Her fiancé had vanished. Her savings were gone. Her little daughter sat confused in the front pew. Then the cathedral doors slammed open, and a man she'd never met walked down the aisle with the kind of authority that made grown men step aside. Damian Volkov wasn't there to congratulate her. He was there to collect a debt her fiancé had stolen, and he had a terrifying solution. Stay until the end to see how this shattered bride reclaimed her life. Like this video and comment with your city, so I can see how far this story travels. The flowers were already wilting by the time Elena noticed the whispers. She stood at the altar in a dress that didn't quite fit, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone white. The church smelled like lilies and old wood, and sunlight filtered through stained glass windows in fractured colors that should have felt romantic but only made her dizzy. 200 people filled the pews behind her, their murmurs growing louder with each passing minute. Reverend Morris shifted his weight, glancing toward the side door for the 14th time. His smile had started to look strained 20 minutes ago. "I'm sure he's just... Traffic can be unpredictable," the Reverend said quietly, though his eyes didn't quite meet hers. Elena nodded because she didn't trust her voice. Her throat felt like someone had wrapped piano wire around it. In the front pew, her daughter Rosie sat swinging her legs, white shoes scuffed at the toes. She was 4 years old and wearing the pale pink dress Elena had saved for 2 months to buy. Rosie didn't understand why they were waiting. She just kept asking when the cake was coming. Elena's friend Sarah sat beside Rosie, one hand resting protectively on the little girl's shoulder. Sarah's expression had shifted from encouraging to worried about 10 minutes ago, and now she just looked angry. The whispers were getting louder. "How long are we supposed to wait?" "This is embarrassing." I knew something was off about him. Elena felt each comment like a physical blow. Heat crawled up her neck and face. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to grab Rosie and run. She wanted to rewind 6 months and never meet Marcus Chen at all. But she'd been so desperate. A single mother with a deadbeat ex who sent birthday cards twice a year and nothing else. Working double shifts at the diner just to keep Rosie fed and in daycare. When Marcus had shown up with his expensive suits and easy smile, talking about investments and opportunities, she'd wanted so badly to believe someone could actually want her. He'd proposed after 3 months. Quick. But he'd said he knew what he wanted. He'd promised to take care of her and Rosie both. He'd paid off her credit card debt as an engagement present. He'd rented this church and invited everyone. And now he was gone. "Elena," Sarah's voice cut through the fog. She'd left Rosie with Elena's cousin and walked up to the altar, heels clicking against the marble floor. "Honey, I tried calling him again. It's going straight to voicemail. Maybe his phone died. For an hour? Maybe he had an accident." Elena's voice cracked. "Maybe he's hurt." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Maybe he's an asshole who doesn't deserve you." The Reverend cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should..." The cathedral doors slammed open. The sound echoed through the vaulted space like a gunshot. Every head turned. Elena's heart lurched into her throat. For one wild, desperate second, she thought it was Marcus, running late, but here, and everything would be fine. Then she saw who it actually was. 3 men walked down the center aisle. The 2 in back wore dark suits and moved like soldiers, their eyes scanning the crowd with professional detachment. But it was the man in front who made the air feel thinner. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black that looked expensive even from a distance. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from granite. Sharp jaw, severe brows, eyes so pale they looked almost silver in the filtered light. He moved with the kind of confidence that didn't ask for space, just took it. People shifted out of the way without seeming to realize they were doing it. Elena couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She just stood there, clutching her wilted bouquet, while this stranger walked toward her like he owned the building. He stopped at the base of the altar steps. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Probably mid-30s, with the kind of face that gave nothing away and the kind of presence that suggested crossing him would be the last mistake you ever made. His pale eyes swept over her once, clinical and assessing. Then he looked at the Reverend. "You can dismiss the guests." His voice was low, accent barely there but present enough to be noticeable. Russian, maybe, or Eastern European. Reverend Morris blinked. I'm sorry, who? The groom isn't coming. The stranger said it like he was commenting on the weather. This wedding is over. The whispers exploded into full conversation. Elena heard gasps, shocked murmurs, someone's aunt saying something about the nerve. Her vision was starting to blur at the edges. Sarah stepped forward, chin up, protective. Excuse me, but who the hell are you? The man's gaze shifted to her. Not your concern. Like hell it's not. Sarah. Elena's voice came out thin and shaky. It's okay. It's not okay. This guy just walked in and, please. Elena's legs were trembling so hard she thought she might collapse. Just take Rosie outside. Sarah looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Elena's face must have convinced her. She pressed her lips together, shot the stranger one last glare, then walked back to collect Rosie. Mommy, what's happening? Rosie's small voice carried across the silence. We're going to get some fresh air, sweetie. Sarah lifted her into her arms. Say bye to Mommy. Rosie waved over Sarah's shoulder as they walked out. Most of the guests were already leaving, conversations buzzing with speculation and judgment. Elena watched them go and felt the humiliation settle into her bones. Within 5 minutes, the cathedral was nearly empty. Just Elena on the altar in her too-tight dress, the Reverend looking deeply uncomfortable, and the stranger with his 2 silent companions. The stranger waited until the last guest had filtered out. Then he climbed the 3 steps to the altar and stopped directly in front of Elena. Up close, he was even more unsettling. Not because he looked cruel, his expression was utterly neutral, but because he looked at her like she was a problem to be solved rather than a person. Elena Carter, he said. Not a question. She nodded because her voice had disappeared again. My name is Damian Volkov. He paused, as if waiting for recognition. When she showed none, something flickered in his expression. Your fiancé stole from me. The words didn't make sense at first. Elena's brain was still trying to process everything, the abandoned wedding, the stranger, the ruined flowers. What? Marcus Chen. Damien's tone didn't change. He took $12 million from an investment fund I manage. He's been running a small-scale fraud operation for years, but 3 months ago he got ambitious. He falsified documents, created fake accounts, and transferred funds he had no authority to touch. Elena's knees buckled. She grabbed the altar rail to stay upright. That's not... Marcus did. Damien pulled a phone from his pocket, tapped the screen, and held it up. Elena saw bank statements, wire transfers, emails with Marcus's name attached. The numbers were enormous, incomprehensible. This is a mistake. Her voice sounded far away. He's a consultant. He helps people with retirement planning. He's a thief. Damien pocketed the phone. And he's gone. Left the country this morning on a flight to somewhere without an extradition treaty. My people confirmed it 2 hours ago. The cathedral tilted. Elena reached for something to steady herself and found only air. Damien's hand caught her elbow. Quick, impersonal, but it kept her from falling. Sit. It wasn't a suggestion. Elena sat on the altar steps because her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. The white dress pooled around her like a broken cloud. Damien stepped back, hands in his pockets, watching her with that same clinical assessment. You didn't know, he said finally. Of course I didn't know. The words burst out sharper than she'd intended. I thought we were... Her voice broke. She pressed her hands over her face, trying to hold herself together in front of this stranger who'd just blown her life apart. Where does that leave me? The question came out muffled through her fingers. In debt. Elena's hands dropped. What? Marcus listed you as a beneficiary on several accounts. You signed documents 2 months ago. Do you remember? She did. Marcus had brought papers to her apartment, said it was just standard procedure for when they got married, combining finances. She'd been folding Rosie's laundry and barely looked at what she was signing. Those documents, Damien continued, make you legally liable for a portion of the stolen funds. The floor dropped out from under her. How much? $3 million. Elena actually laughed. It came out high and slightly hysterical. I make $28,000 a year. I have $600 in savings. I can't. There's no way I could ever. I know. Damien's expression didn't change, which is why we need to discuss alternatives. Alternatives? Elena looked up at him, this stranger in his expensive black suit, who'd walked into her disaster of a wedding with news that destroyed everything. What alternatives? Damien glanced at the Reverend, who was still hovering near the altar with wide eyes. Leave us. Reverend Morris opened his mouth, looked at Elena, then apparently thought better of whatever he was about to say. He nodded and hurried toward the sacristy. Once they were alone, except for the two silent men positioned near the doors, Damien turned back to Elena. I don't need the money, he said. I'll recover it through other channels. What I need is to send a message. A message? That stealing from me has consequences. That people who betray my trust pay for it. He paused. But you're not Marcus Chen. Destroying you wouldn't prove anything except that I punish the wrong people. Elena's heart was hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. So what are you saying? I'm saying I'll forgive the debt. Hope flared, bright and desperate. Really? On one condition. The hope guttered. Elena waited. Damien's pale eyes locked on hers. Marry me instead. For a long moment, Elena just stared at him. Surely she'd misheard. Surely this was some kind of shock-induced hallucination. You're joking. I don't joke about business. This isn't business. This is... She gestured at the empty cathedral, the flowers, the abandoned altar. This is insane. It's practical. Damien's tone remained maddeningly calm. I need a wife for reasons that don't concern you. You need protection from the legal and financial consequences of Marcus's theft. We solve each other's problems. Elena stood up, legs still shaky, but anger giving her strength. I'm not a problem to be solved. I'm a person. I'm aware. And you can't just... People don't just... She was sputtering now, overwhelmed and furious and terrified all at once. I don't even know you. You didn't know Marcus either. The words were cold and precise. And he left you standing at an altar in front of 200 people. At least I'm being honest. That hit harder than it should have. Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes and fought them back with everything she had. She would not cry in front of this man. What exactly are you proposing? She forced the words out steady. A legal marriage. You'll live in my home, attend certain events as my wife, and maintain the appearance of a relationship. In exchange, I'll erase your debt, provide for you and your daughter, and make sure Marcus's mess doesn't touch you. For how long? 3 years. After that, we divorce quietly. You'll receive a settlement that ensures you and your daughter are comfortable. Elena's mind was spinning. This couldn't be real. People didn't actually do this. And what do you get out of it? She asked. Besides whatever message you're sending about consequences. But something shifted in Damien's expression. Too quick to read, but there. That's not your concern. If you want me to marry you, everything about this is my concern. He studied her for a long moment. Elena held his gaze even though every instinct screamed at her to look away. I have business interests that require a certain image, Damien said finally. Stability. Family values. A wife provides that. You mean you need to look respectable? If you prefer. And I'm convenient because I'm already dressed for it? His mouth might have twitched. Might have. Among other reasons. Elena wrapped her arms around herself. The dress suddenly felt ridiculous, the symbol of a future that had never existed, worn in front of a man proposing a different kind of fake future. What about Rosie? The question came out quieter. Your daughter would live with us. She'd be provided for, protected. From what? Damien's expression hardened. From the people who might decide to use Marcus's debts as leverage against you. There are organizations less patient than I am. Ice slid down Elena's spine. You're saying we're in danger. I'm saying you will be, if you refuse my offer. He let that sink in. Marcus didn't just steal from me. He stole from other people who won't care that you're innocent. They'll see you as an asset to be collected. You're threatening me. I'm offering you protection. Damien's voice remained level. There's a difference. Elena wanted to scream at him that there wasn't, that this whole thing was just coercion dressed up in expensive suits and calm voices. But she looked at his face and saw no malice there, just cold, practical assessment. He meant every word. "I need time to think," she said. "You have 5 minutes." "That's not 5 minutes," Damien repeated. "Or I walk out that door and you deal with Marcus's consequences alone." Elena's hands were shaking again. She pressed them against her stomach, trying to think through the panic. What were her options? Run? Where? She had $600 and a 4-year-old daughter. Go to the police? And tell them what? That her fiancé had stolen millions and she'd stupidly signed papers without reading them? Find a lawyer? With what money? What about my job? The question surprised her, but once it was out, she realized she needed to know. "You'd quit? I can't just... You'd have no need to work. Everything would be provided." "I like my job." It wasn't entirely true. The diner was exhausting and the pay was terrible. But it was hers. She'd earned it. Damien shrugged. "Keep it if you want. It makes no difference to me. And after 3 years, when we divorce, you'll have enough money to do whatever you choose. Go to school, start a business, never work again if you prefer." It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. "What's the catch?" Elena asked. "There's always a catch." "The catch," Damien said, "is that you'll be married to me. That comes with expectations, public appearances, discretion, loyalty. Loyalty. I won't tolerate betrayal." His pale eyes locked on hers. "Cheat on me, sell information about me, or try to cross me in any way, and the protection disappears, along with everything else." Elena's stomach twisted. "I would never—" "Good." He checked his watch. 2 minutes. "This is crazy." But she was already calculating, already running through scenarios in her head. Rosie's daycare cost more than Elena made in a week. They were 2 months behind on rent. The car needed new brakes. And now there were people who might come after them for money they didn't have. 1 minute. "I need guarantees," Elena said quickly. "About Rosie. She comes first. Always. Whatever this arrangement is, she doesn't get hurt by it." "Agreed. And I need it in writing, all of it. The debt forgiveness, the timeline, the settlement, everything. My lawyer will draw up a contract. My own lawyer needs to review it." Damien's eyebrow rose slightly. "You don't have a lawyer." "Then I'll get one. I'm not signing anything else without understanding it." For the first time, something that might have been approval flickered across his face. Smart. 30 seconds. Elena's heart was trying to break through her ribs. This was insane. This was the worst idea she'd ever heard. This was... "If I say yes," she said slowly, "when would this happen?" Damien gestured at the empty cathedral around them. "The Reverend is still here. The license is already filed. We could be done in 20 minutes. "Today?" Elena's voice went up an octave. "You want to get married today? The venue is already paid for." "That's not—" She pressed her hands to her temples. Her head was pounding. "I can't just marry a stranger in the same dress I was supposed to marry someone else in. That's—" "Efficient?" Damien finished. "Insane." "Perhaps." He checked his watch again. "But your time is up. What's your answer?" Elena looked at him, this cold, dangerous stranger who'd walked into her ruined wedding and offered her a different kind of deal with the devil. Then she thought about Rosie waiting outside, confused and worried. She thought about the apartment they'd lose if she couldn't make rent. She thought about dangerous people who might come looking for money she didn't have. She thought about standing at this altar 20 minutes ago, believing Marcus was just late, still hoping he'd show up and save her. No one was coming to save her. She had to save herself. "One condition," Elena said, voice steadier than she felt. "I want to see Rosie first. I need to explain this to her." "There's nothing to explain. She's 4. She's my daughter." Elena lifted her chin. "And she deserves to know what's happening, even if she doesn't fully understand. That's non-negotiable." They stared at each other. Elena's heart hammered. She expected him to refuse, to walk away, to tell her the deal was off. Instead, Damien nodded once. "Fine. 5 minutes with your daughter, then we proceed." He pulled out his phone and made a call, spoke in rapid Russian to whoever answered. Elena caught maybe 3 words: child, bring, and now. When he hung up, he looked at her expectantly. I need you to understand something, Elena said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. I'm doing this for Rosie, to protect her. Not because I trust you or believe in whatever this arrangement is, just for her. I don't care why you're doing it. Damien's expression remained neutral. Only that you do. And I need you to understand that if you hurt her, if you hurt my daughter in any way, I will find a way to make you regret it. I don't care how powerful you are or what you can do to me. This time Damien's mouth definitely moved. Not quite a smile, but close. Noted, he said. The cathedral door opened. Sarah walked in carrying Rosie, who'd fallen asleep against her shoulder. Behind them came one of Damien's men. Sarah's eyes were red. She'd clearly been crying. When she saw Elena still standing there, still with Damien, her expression hardened. What the hell is going on? She demanded. This guy's people won't let us leave, won't tell me anything. It's okay. Elena walked down the altar steps, arms outstretched for her daughter. I'll explain everything. Sarah handed Rosie over, reluctantly. The little girl stirred but didn't wake, just nuzzled into Elena's shoulder with the complete trust only children have. Elena held her close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, feeling the warm weight of her. Sarah, she said quietly, I need you to trust me. Trust you to what? Elena, what's happening? I'm fixing things. Elena looked at her friend, her only friend really, the one person who'd stood by her through every disaster. And I need you to not ask questions right now, please. Sarah's jaw worked. Her eyes moved between Elena and Damien, clearly trying to piece together what she was missing. This is about Marcus, isn't it? She said finally. About whatever he did. Elena didn't answer. I knew there was something wrong with him. Sarah's voice was thick. I told you he was too good to be true. You did, Elena agreed softly. You were right. So what are you going to do? Elena looked at Rosie's sleeping face, at the small hands curled against her chest, at the pink dress Elena had worked overtime to afford. I'm going to make sure she's safe, Elena said. Whatever it takes. She kissed Rosie's forehead, then gently transferred her back to Sarah's arms. Take her to your place, she told her friend. I'll call you tonight and explain everything. Elena. Please, Sarah. Just trust me. Sarah's eyes filled with tears again, but she nodded. She adjusted her grip on Rosie, then looked at Damien with an expression that could have melted steel. If you hurt her, Sarah said quietly, I will dedicate my entire life to destroying yours. Damien's expression didn't change. The line forms behind her. Sarah blinked, clearly not expecting that answer. Then she turned and carried Rosie out, one of Damien's men escorting her. When they were gone, Elena turned back to face him. Okay, she said. Let's do this before I change my mind. Damien gestured to one of his remaining men, who disappeared into the sacristy. He returned with Reverend Morris, who looked deeply uncomfortable. Reverend, Damien said, we're ready. I'm not sure this is... The Reverend looked at Elena. Are you certain you want to do this, my dear? No, Elena thought, but she said, yes. It's highly irregular. Life is irregular. Damien's tone suggested the discussion was over. Begin. The Reverend looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Damien's presence made him swallow whatever objection he had. He opened his Bible with shaking hands. Elena stood at the altar for the second time that day, in the same dress with the same wilted flowers. But this time, the man beside her was a stranger with cold eyes and colder promises. The Reverend began the ceremony. Elena barely heard the words. She felt outside her body, watching this happen to someone else. Some other woman in a borrowed dress saying, I do, to a man she'd met 20 minutes ago. Damien's responses were clipped and businesslike. When asked for the rings, he produced a simple gold band from his pocket. Where it had come from, Elena had no idea. It was too big for her finger, sliding loosely when he slipped it on. I now pronounce you man and wife, Reverend Morris said, sounding relieved it was over. You may kiss the bride. Elena's stomach dropped. She hadn't thought about that part. Damien looked at her, expression unreadable. Then he leaned in. Elena closed her eyes reflexively. His lips touched her forehead, brief, impersonal, over in a second. When Elena opened her eyes, he'd already stepped back. "Congratulations," the Reverend said weakly. Damien pulled an envelope from his jacket and handed it to him. "For your discretion." The Reverend took it with trembling fingers and practically ran toward the exit, and then they were alone. Husband and wife. Married. Elena looked at the gold band loose on her finger. This morning she'd woken up thinking she'd marry Marcus. Now she was married to Damien Volkov, a man she knew nothing about except that he was dangerous, and she owed him $3 million. No, not anymore. The debt was forgiven. That was the deal. "What happens now?" she asked. Damien was already walking toward the door. "Now you come home. I need to pack. My apartment will be handled. My people will collect your belongings. I have things I need to make a list." He didn't slow down. "Anything you want kept, they'll bring it. Everything else will be dealt with." Elena had to half jog to keep up with his long strides. "You can't just—" "I can." He pushed open the cathedral doors. Sunlight hit Elena's face, making her squint. A black car waited at the curb, sleek and expensive, windows tinted. One of Damien's men opened the back door. "Get in," Damien said. Elena stood on the church steps in her wedding dress, looking at the open car door. This was it. Last chance to run. Last chance to say no, to take her chances with lawyers and debt collectors and whatever else came. She thought about Rosie's small, trusting face. Elena got in the car. Damien slid in beside her. The door closed with a solid thunk. The interior smelled like leather and something sharp, cologne maybe. The seats were soft enough that Elena sank into them. The driver pulled away from the curb smoothly. Elena watched the cathedral disappear in the side mirror. "Where are we going?" she asked. "My estate. About 40 minutes outside the city." "Estate?" Elena turned to look at him. "You live on an estate." "Yes." "What do you do exactly?" The question had been nagging at her since he'd first mentioned managing investment funds. "For work, I mean." "I manage assets." "That's vague." Damien's pale eyes flicked to her. "Intentionally." "I just married you. I think I deserve less vague." "You married me to erase a debt. What I do for work wasn't part of the agreement." Elena's hands tightened in her lap. "Fine. Then tell me what kind of expectations come with this arrangement. You mentioned public appearances." "Occasionally, yes. Business dinners, charity events. You'll need appropriate clothing." "I have clothing." His gaze swept over her wedding dress, borrowed, slightly too tight, coffee stain on the hem she'd tried to hide with bleach. "You'll need different clothing," he amended. Heat crept up Elena's neck. "I can dress myself." "I'm sure you can, but you'll be representing me now. That requires a certain standard." "You mean you're embarrassed to be seen with me? I mean you're unprepared for the world you're entering." "That's not an insult, it's a fact." Elena bit back the response burning on her tongue. He was right, technically. She had no idea what his world looked like. But that didn't make his words sting less. They drove in silence for a while. The city gave way to suburbs, then to countryside. Trees lined the road, and houses became larger and farther apart. Elena's exhaustion was starting to catch up with her. The adrenaline that had kept her upright through the disaster of the morning was wearing off, leaving her shaky and hollow. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. Damien didn't look away from the window. "You can ask." "Why me? If you need a wife, there must be I don't know, people in your circle. People who understand this world already." "There are. So why choose someone you had to coerce?" Now he did look at her. "Because you won't fall in love with me." The bluntness of it startled her. "What?" "Women in my circle have expectations. They want romance, permanence, access to power. You want none of those things. You want safety for your daughter and freedom from debt. That makes you predictable, manageable." "Manageable," Elena repeated. The word tasted bitter. "It's not personal. It feels personal." "Then you'll need to develop thicker skin." Elena turned away, blinking hard against the sudden sting in her eyes. She would not cry. Not in front of him, not again. The car turned onto a private road, trees giving way to manicured lawns. In the distance, Elena could see a house. No, not a house. A mansion. 3 stories of pale stone with columns and huge windows that caught the afternoon light. "This is where you live?" The words came out smaller than she'd intended. "This is where we live now," Damien corrected. The car pulled up to the front entrance. Another man in a dark suit opened Elena's door before she could reach for the handle. She stepped out onto gravel that crunched under her borrowed shoes. The mansion loomed above her, impossibly large, impossibly far from the cramped apartment where she'd woken up that morning. Damien came around the car. "Come. I'll show you your room." "My room?" Elena followed him up the steps. Aren't we supposed to? We're married on paper, not in practice." He pushed open the front door, heavy wood, intricately carved. "You'll have your own space. I have mine." Relief flooded through her. "Oh, good." The interior was as overwhelming as the exterior. Marble floors, high ceilings, a curved staircase that belonged in a movie. Everything was pristine and cold and expensive. A woman appeared from a side hallway, older, gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing a simple black dress. "Sir," she said with a slight accent, "welcome home." "Mrs. Kovac, this is Elena, my wife. She'll be living here now." Damien's tone was matter-of-fact. "Please prepare the East Wing guest suite for her, Mrs." Kovac's eyes widened slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Of course, right away." Elena will provide a list of items to be retrieved from her former residence. See that it's handled discreetly. "Yes, sir." Damien started toward the staircase, clearly expecting Elena to follow. She did, legs heavy with exhaustion. They climbed to the second floor, walked down a hallway lined with paintings Elena was too tired to properly look at. Damien opened a door near the end. "This will be yours," he said. Elena stepped inside and almost laughed. The room was bigger than her entire apartment had been. King-size bed with white linens, sitting area with a couch and armchairs, enormous windows overlooking gardens she could see in the distance. "The bathroom is through there." Damien pointed to another door. "Mrs. Kovac will bring you anything you need. Dinner is at 7. You're not required to attend tonight if you'd prefer to rest." Elena turned to face him. Her husband. This stranger. "What happens now?" she asked for the second time that day. "Now," Damien said, "you adjust. This is your life for the next 3 years. I suggest you get comfortable." He started to leave, then paused at the door. "One more thing," he said without looking back. "The ring is temporary. I'll have something proper made for you. Can't have people thinking I'm cheap." Then he was gone, door closing behind him with a soft click. Elena stood alone in her beautiful prison, still wearing her wedding dress, staring at the loose gold band on her finger. She'd done it. She'd married a stranger to save her daughter. She'd traded one kind of cage for another, and she had no idea if she'd made the right choice. Elena woke up disoriented, heart pounding, unsure where she was. The ceiling was wrong, too high, too white. The bed was too soft. Everything smelled unfamiliar, like lavender and something expensive she couldn't name. Then it came back in a rush. The cathedral. Damien. The wedding that wasn't supposed to happen. She sat up, still wearing the dress. It had twisted around her legs while she slept, wrinkled beyond saving now. The loose wedding ring caught the morning light coming through windows she hadn't bothered to close last night. Her phone sat on the nightstand. One of Damien's people must have brought it up. 17 missed calls from Sarah. 12 text messages. Elena's hands shook as she opened them. What the hell is going on? Call me now. Elena? I'm serious. Rosie keeps asking where you are. If you don't call me in the next hour, I'm calling the police. The last message had come in 20 minutes ago. Elena dialed before she could think better of it. Sarah answered on the first ring. Where are you? I'm okay. Is Rosie? Rosie's fine. She's eating cereal and watching cartoons. You want to tell me why she doesn't have a mother right now? Elena flinched at the accusation in Sarah's voice. I know you're angry. Angry? I'm way past angry. You disappeared with some Russian mobster yesterday and left your daughter with me. No explanation, no nothing. Just trust me, and then radio silence for 16 hours. He's not a mobster. Elena wasn't sure why she was defending Damien. Maybe because she needed to believe it herself. Then what is he? It's complicated. Uncomplicated. Elena closed her eyes, trying to figure out where to start. Marcus stole money from him. A lot of money. And because I signed some papers, I'm legally responsible for part of it. Silence on the other end. Then, how much? $3 million. Sarah's breath hitched. Jesus Christ. Damien offered to forgive the debt if I married him instead. It's a business arrangement. 3 years, then we divorce, and Rosie and I are set up for life. The words sounded hollow, even to Elena's own ears. So you actually married him? Sarah's voice had gone flat. That wasn't some kind of nightmare I imagined. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. Not when the alternative is losing everything and putting Rosie in danger. Elena's throat tightened. There are other people Marcus stole from. People who wouldn't care that I didn't know what he was doing. More silence. Elena could hear Rosie singing along to whatever cartoon was playing in the background. Where are you right now? Sarah asked finally. His estate, outside the city. Send me the address. Sarah, send me the address or I'm keeping Rosie until you do. Elena almost laughed. Almost. You can't kidnap my daughter. Watch me. But Sarah's voice had softened slightly. I need to see that you're okay. That this isn't, I don't know, some kind of hostage situation. It's not. Prove it. Let me bring Rosie to you. Let me see where you're living. Elena looked around the massive bedroom at the wealth that surrounded her like a foreign country. Okay, but you have to promise not to make a scene. I'll make whatever scene I want if I think you're in trouble. Sarah, please, this is already hard enough. Her friend sighed. Fine. Text me the address. We'll be there in an hour. The line went dead. Elena sat on the edge of the bed, still in yesterday's ruined dress, trying to figure out what to do next. She needed a shower, clean clothes, coffee, something to make her feel less like she'd been hit by a truck. She found the bathroom, all marble and gold fixtures, bigger than her old bedroom, and stripped off the wedding dress. It fell in a heap on the floor, and Elena left it there. She never wanted to see it again. The shower had about 15 different settings. Elena just turned the knob until hot water came out and stood under it until her skin turned pink. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel that was probably worth more than her car, she found clothes laid out on the bed. Jeans, a soft gray sweater, underwear still in packaging. Everything in her size. The precision of it unsettled her. How had they known? When had someone come in? She dressed quickly, then went looking for coffee and whoever ran this place. The house was even more overwhelming in daylight. Elena got lost twice trying to find the stairs, ended up in what looked like a library with floor-to-ceiling books, then finally located the main staircase. Voices drifted up from somewhere below. One of them was Damien's, speaking in that same rapid Russian she'd heard yesterday. Elena followed the sound to a dining room that could have seated 20 people. Damien sat at one end of the long table, phone to his ear, a laptop open in front of him. He'd changed into different clothes, dark slacks, white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked like he'd been awake for hours. He glanced up when she entered, gestured to the empty seats, and continued his conversation. Elena sat down awkwardly, not sure what else to do. Mrs. Kovac appeared from a side door. Coffee, Mrs. Volkov? The name made Elena's stomach flip. Yes, please, just black. Are you hungry? I can prepare breakfast. Elena's stomach growled, answering for her. That would be great. Thank you. Mrs. Kovac nodded and disappeared. Damien ended his call and closed the laptop. You slept in your dress, he observed. I was tired. Clearly. He poured himself more coffee from a carafe on the table. Mrs. Kovac said your friend is bringing your daughter here this morning. I didn't know if that was okay. It's your home now. You don't need permission to have guests. The word home felt wrong. This wasn't home. Home was the apartment with the leaky faucet and the neighbor's dog that barked at 3 a.m. This was just an elaborate cage. Thank you, Elena said anyway. Mrs. Kovac returned with a plate, eggs, toast, fruit, arranged in a way that looked almost too pretty to eat. Elena ate it anyway, suddenly starving. Damien watched her over the rim of his coffee cup. My lawyer will be here at noon. You'll sign the contract then. I need my own lawyer to review it first. Already arranged. He'll arrive at 11:30. Elena set down her fork. You work fast. I don't waste time. He stood, buttoning his cuffs. I have calls to make. Let me know if you need anything. He was almost to the door when Elena spoke again. What am I supposed to tell Rosie? Damien paused. About what? About this. About you. She's going to ask questions. Tell her the truth, that we're married and she's living here now. She's 4. That's not going to make sense to her. Then simplify it until it does. His tone suggested the conversation was over. Children are resilient. She'll adjust. You don't know anything about children. Something flickered across his face, too fast to read. No, I don't. Then he was gone, leaving Elena alone with her expensive breakfast and the sinking feeling that she'd made a terrible mistake. Sarah's car pulled up at exactly 9:30. Elena watched from the front steps as her friend got out, took one look at the mansion and said, You have got to be kidding me. Rosie tumbled out of the back seat, wearing mismatched socks and the shirt she'd insisted on sleeping in. When she saw Elena, her face lit up. Mommy! Elena caught her in a hug that nearly knocked her over. Rosie smelled like maple syrup and Sarah's lavender detergent, and Elena held on longer than necessary. I missed you, baby. Sarah said you had a sleepover. Rosie pulled back to look at her seriously. Without me. I know. I'm sorry. Is this your new house? Rosie's attention had already shifted to the mansion behind them. It's really big. It is really big. Elena set her down, took her hand. Want to see inside? Sarah followed them up the steps, her expression somewhere between impressed and horrified. This is insane, she muttered. This is actually insane. I know. No, you don't. Elena, this is... She gestured at the columns, the massive front door. People don't actually live like this. Apparently some people do. Inside, Rosie's eyes went huge. Whoa! You can say that again, Sarah muttered. Mrs. Kovac appeared, took in the visitors, and smiled warmly. You must be Rosie. Your mother told me about you. Rosie hid behind Elena's legs, suddenly shy. It's okay, baby. This is Mrs. Kovac. She helps take care of the house. Would you like some cookies? Mrs. Kovac asked. I just made a fresh batch. At the word cookies, Rosie's shyness evaporated. Yes, please. Mrs. Kovac held out her hand. Come with me to the kitchen. You can help me put them on a plate. Rosie looked up at Elena for permission. Elena nodded, even though every maternal instinct screamed at her not to let her daughter out of sight in this unfamiliar place. Once they were gone, Sarah turned on her. Okay, talk. What the hell is really going on? Elena led her to a sitting room off the main entrance, closed the door. I told you, it's a business arrangement. Business arrangements don't come with mansions and housekeepers. Sarah paced the room, agitated. What does this guy actually do? And don't tell me he manages assets. That's code for something. I don't know exactly. Then find out. Elena, you married a stranger. You're living in his house. You have a daughter to protect. You think I don't know that? Elena's voice rose. You think I'm not terrified? But what was I supposed to do? Marcus disappeared and left me holding the bag for $3 million I don't have. Damien offered me a way out. By trapping you in a different kind of prison. It's not a prison. I can leave whenever I want. Sarah stopped pacing. Can you, though? Really? The question hung between them. Elena wanted to say yes, but she wasn't actually sure. The contract wasn't signed yet. She didn't know what the terms were. I need you to trust me, Elena said quietly. I know this looks crazy. It is crazy, but I'm doing what I have to do to keep Rosie safe. Sarah's expression softened. She crossed the room and pulled Elena into a hug. I do trust you. I just don't trust him. That makes 2 of us. They stayed like that for a moment, and Elena let herself lean into her friend's solid presence. Sarah had been there through everything. The pregnancy, the breakup with Rosie's father, the endless string of bad jobs and worse apartments. She was the only person who'd never looked at Elena with pity or judgment. Promise me something, Sarah said into Elena's hair. If this goes bad, you call me. No matter what time, no matter what's happening. You call and I'll come get you. I promise. The door opened. Both women pulled apart quickly. Damien stood in the doorway, still in his work clothes, expression unreadable. The lawyers are here early. We should start. Sarah's whole body went rigid. You must be the husband. And you must be the friend. Damien's gaze flicked between them. I assume Elena told you about our arrangement. She told me you blackmailed her into marriage. Sarah, Elena started. It's fine. Damien's tone didn't change. She's protecting you. That's admirable. He looked at Sarah directly. But unnecessary. I have no interest in hurting Elena or her daughter. Forgive me if I don't take your word for it. I'm not asking you to. He shifted his attention back to Elena. The lawyers are in my study. Take your time. He left without waiting for a response. Sarah stared after him. He's terrifying. I know. Like genuinely scary. Those eyes. I know. And you're married to him. Elena looked at the loose ring still on her finger. For 3 years. The contract was 47 pages long. Elena sat in Damien's study, more leather and dark wood and books she'd never read, while her court-appointed lawyer, a nervous man named Philip Reeves, walked her through each section. Damien sat across from her, his own lawyer beside him. Neither of them spoke unless Elena asked a direct question. Clause 7, Reeves said, pushing his glasses up his nose. This outlines the financial arrangements. Mr. Volkov will provide a monthly allowance of $15,000 for personal expenses. All household costs, medical expenses, and childcare are covered separately. Elena's coffee cup froze halfway to her mouth. $15,000? A month? Is that acceptable? Damien asked. That's more than I made in 6 months at the diner. You won't be working at the diner anymore. I haven't quit yet. His eyebrow rose slightly. You plan to keep working there? I don't know. Maybe. Elena set down the cup. The contract says I can. The contract says many things. Let's continue. Reeves cleared his throat. Clause 12 addresses the marriage itself. You and Mr. Volkov will maintain separate bedrooms. There is no expectation of intimate relations. However, in public settings, you're required to present as a married couple. That includes physical affection when appropriate. Define appropriate, Elena said. Damien's lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Stern, answered. Hand-holding, arms around waists, the occasional kiss on the cheek, nothing that would make either party uncomfortable. And if I'm uncomfortable with all of it, then we'll minimize public appearances. Damien's voice was level. But there will be some. That's non-negotiable. Elena nodded slowly. Okay. Clause 18, Reeves continued, covers the child. Rosie will live in this residence full-time. Mr. Volkov agrees to provide for all her needs, including education, health care, and extracurricular activities. You retain full parental authority, but Mr. Volkov requests to be consulted on major decisions. What kind of decisions? Elena asked. Schools, medical procedures, anything significant? Elena looked at Damien. Why? Because if she's living under my roof, I have a responsibility to ensure her well-being. He leaned back in his chair. That doesn't mean I'm trying to replace her father. It means I won't be a stranger in her life for 3 years. It was reasonable, terrifyingly reasonable. Elena had expected demands, control, maybe cruelty, not this calm practicality. Fine, she said. They went through the rest of the contract, confidentiality clauses, expectations for public behavior. The settlement she'd receive at the end of 3 years, a number so large Elena had to read it twice to believe it. This can't be real, she said, finally. It's real. Damien hadn't looked away from her once during the entire meeting. 3 years of your cooperation is worth that to me. Why? What are you getting out of this? That's not your concern. It's absolutely my concern. For the first time, Damien's expression shifted. Not anger, exactly. More like someone deciding whether to tell the truth. I have business partners who value stability, he said, finally. Family men. They don't trust bachelors. A wife and child make me acceptable to them. So this is about appearances. Everything is about appearances. Elena wanted to argue, but she was too tired and overwhelmed. She looked at Reeves. Is this contract fair? The lawyer hesitated. It's unusual, but yes, From a legal standpoint, it protects your interests. The financial terms are extremely generous. The exit clause is clear. And most importantly, it releases you from all liability related to Marcus Chen's fraudulent activities. That was what mattered. The rest was just details. Where do I sign? Reeves showed her. Elena signed her name 7 times, initialing various pages. Damien did the same. Their lawyers witnessed and notarized. And just like that, it was official. Not just married, but contractually bound for 3 years. Congratulations, Patricia said, gathering the documents. I'll file these with the court. Reeves packed up his briefcase quickly, looking relieved to be leaving. If you need anything, Ms. Carter, Mrs. Volkov, please don't hesitate to call. After they left, Elena sat in the sudden quiet of the study. Damien poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter on the sideboard. You did well, he said. I signed my life away. I don't think that qualifies as doing well. You secured your daughter's future. That's more than most people manage. He took a sip, watching her over the rim of the glass. Your friend is still here. She's in the garden with Rosie. How do you know that? I have security cameras. Of course he did. Are you watching us right now? Should I be? Elena stood up, suddenly needing to move. I need to talk to Rosie. Explain that we're staying here. Do you need me there? The question surprised her. Do you want to be? It would be easier if she meets me under controlled circumstances. Better than stumbling across me in the hallway later. He was right, which didn't make it any easier. Okay, Elena said. Let's go. They found Sarah and Rosie in what Mrs. Kovac had called the East Garden, a massive space with flower beds and a fountain and trees that had probably been growing since before Elena was born. Rosie was chasing a butterfly, her laughter carrying across the manicured lawn. Sarah sat on a stone bench, watching her with an expression that suggested she was cataloging escape routes. When she saw Damien, she stood up. Is the interrogation over? It was a contract signing, not an interrogation, Elena said. Same thing in my book. Rosie ran over, out of breath. Mommy, there are flowers everywhere. And Mrs. Kovac said there's a pool, but it's still too cold to swim in. I see that, baby. Elena crouched down to her level. Can we talk for a minute? Grown-up talk? Rosie's face fell. Am I in trouble? No, nothing like that. Elena smoothed her daughter's hair. Remember how I told you Mommy was getting married? To Marcus. Rosie's nose wrinkled. He smelled funny. Sarah snorted. Elena shot her a look. Well, I didn't marry Marcus. I married someone else instead. She gestured to Damien, who stood a few feet back, hands in his pockets. This is Damien. But Rosie looked up at him with the brutal honesty of a 4-year-old. You're really tall. I am, Damien agreed. Are you nice? I try to be. Do you like cookies? Sometimes. Rosie considered this. Mrs. Kovac makes good cookies. You should try them. I'll do that. The exchange was so normal that Elena almost forgot how surreal this whole situation was. Almost. Damien and I are married now, Elena continued, which means we're going to live here with him for a while. You, me, and Damien. Rosie's forehead creased. What about our apartment? We're not going back to the apartment. Why not? Because this is our home now. But all my stuff is there, my toys, my bed. We'll bring all your stuff here. You'll have a new bed, a new room. It'll be an adventure. Rosie looked skeptical. What about Sarah? Sarah can visit whenever she wants. Elena glanced at her friend, who nodded quickly. Any time, kiddo. I'm not going anywhere. Rosie turned back to Damien. Do you have kids? No. Why not? I haven't had time. Oh. Rosie thought about this. Are you going to be my daddy now? The question hung in the air. Elena's heart stopped. She hadn't prepared for this, hadn't thought about what to say. Damien crouched down so he was at Rosie's eye level. When he spoke, his voice was gentler than Elena had heard it yet. No. You already have a father. I'm just your mother's husband. But I'll take care of you and your mom while you're here. Is that okay? Rosie studied him seriously. Then she stuck out her hand. Deal. Damien shook it solemnly. Deal. Just like that, the tension broke. Rosie ran off to chase another butterfly, and Damien straightened, brushing grass off his pants. Sarah watched him with an expression Elena couldn't quite read. That was actually decent of you. I'm not a monster, Damien said. Jury's still out on that. Sarah, Elena warned. What? I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Sarah picked up her purse from the bench. I should get going. I have a shift at 4. Elena walked her to the car, Rosie skipping ahead of them. You going to be okay? Sarah asked quietly. I don't know yet. He's not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone scarier, I guess. More obviously dangerous. Sarah clicked her key fob and her car beeped. But that might be worse. The danger you can't see coming. You're not helping. I'm not trying to help. I'm trying to make sure you stay alert. Sarah pulled her into a quick hug. Call me tonight and tomorrow. And every day until I'm convinced you're actually safe. I will. Rosie climbed into the back seat for one more hug, then Sarah drove away, gravel crunching under her tires. Elena stood in the circular drive, watching the car disappear down the tree-lined road. Behind her, the mansion loomed. Inside somewhere was her new husband, a man she knew almost nothing about. Your friend is loyal, Damien said from the top of the steps. Elena turned. She hadn't heard him approach. She's the best person I know. That's rare. What is? Real loyalty. Most people's friendship has a price. Not Sarah's. Everyone has a price. Some are just higher than others. He descended the steps. Mrs. Kovac had your belongings brought from your apartment. They're in your room. If you need help unpacking, I can manage. I'm sure you can. He paused. Dinner is at 7, as I mentioned. You're welcome to eat with me, or Mrs. Kovac can bring something to your room. I should probably eat with you. Get Rosie used to it. As you prefer. He started to walk away. Elena called after him. Damien? He stopped, looked back. Thank you for what you said to Rosie about not trying to replace her father. I meant it. I have no interest in playing family. This is a business arrangement. Better for everyone if we're honest about that. The words should have been reassuring. Instead, they just made Elena feel hollow. That night, Elena stood in what was now Rosie's bedroom, twice the size of their old apartment's living room, with a bed shaped like a castle and more toys than any child needed, and watched her daughter sleep. Mrs. Kovac had unpacked everything with ruthless efficiency. Rosie's stuffed animals were arranged on shelves. Her clothes hung in a closet bigger than Elena's old bedroom. Her nightlight glowed in the corner. It should have felt like victory, safety, security. Instead, Elena just felt lost. A soft knock at the door made her turn. Damien stood in the hallway, still dressed but with his tie loosened. Is she settled? He asked quietly. Finally, she wanted 3 stories and 4 glasses of water. Stalling technique. Very effective one. They stood in awkward silence for a moment. Then Damien said, I wanted to discuss something with you. Elena's stomach tightened. Okay. There's a charity gala next Saturday. I need you to attend with me. Already? The sooner we're seen together publicly, the sooner questions stop being asked. He leaned against the doorframe. It's formal. Mrs. Kovac will arrange for appropriate clothing. I can buy my own clothes. Not for this, you can't. The people who'll be there will notice if you're wearing something off the rack. Heat crept up Elena's neck. I don't know how to act at fancy parties. You don't need to act, just stand beside me and smile when spoken to. That's degrading. That's the agreement. His tone didn't change. You knew there would be public appearances. Elena wanted to argue, but he was right. She had signed the contract. She'd agreed to this. Fine, she said. 1 week. I'll be ready. Damien nodded and turned to leave. Then he paused. You did well today, he said without looking back. With Rosie, making this transition easier for her. She's 4. Everything's easier for her than it is for me. Still, you're a good mother. The compliment caught her off guard. Before she could respond, he was gone, footsteps fading down the hallway. Elena returned to watching Rosie sleep, the loose wedding ring heavy on her finger. 7 days until the gala. 3 years until freedom. She could do this. She had to. For Rosie, she could survive anything. The week passed in a blur of strange routines and uncomfortable adjustments. Elena learned that Damien left for work before 6 every morning and rarely returned before 8 at night. She learned that Mrs. Kovac ran the household with military precision and didn't tolerate dishes left in the sink. She learned that the East Wing had 12 rooms, most of them empty, and that Rosie had claimed 3 of them for various imaginary games. What she didn't learn was anything real about her husband. He was polite at dinner when he bothered to show up. He asked Rosie about her day and listened to her rambling answers with what seemed like genuine attention. He never raised his voice, never made demands, never gave Elena any reason to feel unsafe, and yet she couldn't shake the feeling that she was living with a stranger who could turn dangerous at any moment. On Thursday morning, Mrs. Kovac knocked on Elena's bedroom door holding a garment bag. "For the gala," she said, laying it carefully across the bed. Mr. Volkov had several options sent over. This one seemed most appropriate. Elena unzipped the bag and stopped breathing. The dress was midnight blue, simple but clearly expensive. The fabric felt like water under her fingers. She checked the tag and felt her stomach drop at the number of zeros. "I can't wear this." "Why not?" "Because it costs more than my car did." Mrs. Kovac's mouth twitched. "Then perhaps it's time for a better car." "That's not the point." "The point, Mrs. Volkov, is that you're attending an event where everyone will be looking at you, at who you are and where you came from. They'll be judging." The older woman's expression softened slightly. "Give them nothing to criticize." Elena wanted to argue that she shouldn't have to prove anything to people she didn't know, but Mrs. Kovac was already heading for the door. "There are shoes as well, and jewelry. I'll help you with your hair tomorrow evening." After she left, Elena stood staring at the dress. Her hands were shaking again. She'd managed to avoid thinking too hard about the gala, about being paraded in front of Damien's world like some kind of acquisition. Now it was less than 48 hours away, and she had no idea how to be the person he needed her to be. She found Rosie in the library, sprawled on the floor with crayons and paper. Damien sat in one of the leather chairs nearby, laptop open, but his attention was on Rosie's artwork. "That's very colorful," he was saying. "It's a dragon," Rosie explained, "but a nice dragon, not the mean kind." "I see. What's the dragon's name?" "Steve." Damien's expression didn't change. "Steve is an excellent name for a dragon." Elena cleared her throat. Both of them looked up. "I need to talk to you," she said to Damien. "About tomorrow." He closed the laptop. "Rosie, can you give us a minute?" "Can I keep drawing?" "Of course." Rosie went back to her crayons, already absorbed again. Damien stood and gestured for Elena to follow him to the far corner of the library. "What's wrong?" he asked. "I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow night." The words came out in a rush. "I don't know how to act at these things. I don't know what to say to people. I'm going to embarrass you." "You won't." "How do you know?" "Because all you have to do is stay close to me and let me handle the conversations." He said it like it was simple. "If someone asks you a direct question, answer honestly but briefly. Don't volunteer information. Don't try to impress anyone." "What if they ask how we met?" "Tell them we met through mutual friends." That's vague enough to be believable and boring enough that they won't push for details. Elena wrapped her arms around herself. "What if someone recognizes me from the diner?" "They won't. The people at this event don't eat at diners." It should have been reassuring. Instead, it just highlighted how completely out of her depth she was. "I'm going to ruin this for you," she said quietly. Damien was silent for a moment. Then he moved closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Listen to me," he said. "You survived Marcus abandoning you at the altar in front of 200 people. You agreed to marry a stranger to protect your daughter. You signed a contract that terrifies you because it was the smart move." His voice was low, intense. "You're stronger than you think. One party full of boring people isn't going to break you." Elena blinked, caught off guard by the conviction in his tone. "You really believe that?" "I don't say things I don't believe." She wanted to trust him, wanted to believe she could do this, but the fear sat in her chest like a stone. "What if I mess up anyway?" "Then we'll handle it." He stepped back, creating distance again. "Stop expecting disaster. It's exhausting to watch." The words stung, but they also broke through her spiral. Elena took a breath, then another. "Okay," she said. "I'll try." "Good." He glanced at his watch. "I have a call in 10 minutes. Was there anything else?" "No, that's it." He nodded and left, taking his laptop with him. Elena returned to sit on the floor next to Rosie, who'd moved on from Steve the Dragon to what looked like a family portrait. "Who's this?" Elena asked, pointing to a stick figure with yellow hair. "That's you, Mommy." "And this one?" "That's me." Rosie added more purple to the smaller figure's dress. "And that's Damien." The third figure stood slightly apart from the other two, tall and dark. Rosie had drawn him without a smile. "Is that how you see him?" Elena asked carefully. "Separate from us?" Rosie shrugged. "He's nice, but he's not Daddy. He's just there." It was such a simple observation, but it hit Elena hard. That's exactly what Damien was. Just there, existing in the same space, but not really part of their lives. "Do you like him?" Elena asked. Rosie considered this seriously. "He doesn't yell, and he lets me draw in the library. And yesterday he showed me how the fountain works." She added more details to the drawing. "I like Mrs. Kovac better, though. She knows how to make grilled cheese the right way." Elena laughed despite herself. "What's the right way?" "With the cheese all melty and the bread crunchy, but not too crunchy. That is the right way." They colored together in comfortable silence. Outside the tall windows, afternoon sun filtered through the trees. It was peaceful in a way that made Elena's chest ache. This could have been nice. This big house, the safety, the lack of constant financial stress, if it were real instead of an elaborate performance. That night at dinner, Damien brought up the topic Elena had been avoiding. "I've arranged for a tutor to work with Rosie," he said, cutting into his steak with precision. "She'll start next week." Elena's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "What?" "A tutor for early education, reading fundamentals, basic math, that sort of thing. She's 4, which is when children should start preparing for kindergarten. She doesn't need a tutor. She knows her letters and can count to 20. She's fine." Damien set down his knife. "I'm not criticizing her development. I'm offering her an advantage. An advantage I didn't ask for. The contract states I provide for her education. This is part of that." Elena's hands tightened around her fork. "You should have discussed this with me first." "I'm discussing it now." "No, you're informing me. That's different." They stared at each other across the table. Rosie looked between them, sensing tension she didn't understand. "Are you guys fighting?" she asked in a small voice. "No, baby," Elena said quickly. "We're just talking." "It sounds like fighting." "It's not. I promise." Elena shot Damien a look that clearly said, "See what you did." He had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "Your mother and I are having a disagreement about what's best for you, that's all." "Oh." Rosie pushed peas around her plate. "I don't want you to be mad at each other." "We're not mad," Damien said, which was probably a lie, but a kind one. After dinner, once Rosie was in bed, Elena found Damien in his study. She knocked on the half-open door. "We need to establish some ground rules," she said without preamble. He looked up from whatever he was reading. "Such as?" "Such as you don't make decisions about Rosie without talking to me first. That's what the contract says. Major decisions require consultation." "A tutor isn't a major decision." "It is to me." Elena stepped into the room, refusing to be intimidated by the expensive furniture and the walls lined with books. "I'm her mother. I get a say in how she's raised." "I'm not trying to take that from you." "Then stop acting like you know what's best for her when you've known her for less than a week." Damien closed the folder in front of him. "You're right. I should have asked first." The agreement caught Elena off guard. "Oh, okay. But I still think a tutor is a good idea. This house is isolated. She needs interaction with someone other than you and Mrs. Kovac. She has Sarah. Sarah works full-time. Then I'll enroll her in a preschool program. In the city. That's an hour's drive each way." Elena hadn't thought about that. The estate's location had felt like a minor detail compared to everything else. But now she realized how cut off they actually were. "There must be something closer," she said. "There isn't. Not that would meet the standards she deserves." Damien stood, came around the desk. "The tutor I found is excellent. Former elementary school teacher, early childhood education specialist. She can come 3 times a week for 2 hours. Rosie can meet her first, see if they get along. If she doesn't like it, we'll find another solution." It was reasonable. Frustratingly reasonable. Elena wanted to keep arguing just on principle, but she couldn't find a good reason to. "Fine," she said. But I meet this tutor first, before she spends any time with Rosie. Agreed. And if I don't like her, we find someone else. Of course. Elena turned to leave, then paused. Why do you care so much? About Rosie's education, I mean. This is temporary. In 3 years, we're gone. Damien's expression shifted, something unreadable passing through his eyes. 3 years is a long time in a child's development. I'd rather she benefit from being here than simply endure it. That's almost kind of you? Don't sound so surprised. I'm still figuring you out. Good luck with that. His mouth curved slightly. I've been trying for 36 years without much success. It was the first joke she'd heard him make. The first hint that there might be something under the cold exterior besides more coldness. Elena found herself almost smiling back. I should go. Long day tomorrow. Try to sleep. You'll need your energy for the gala. The reminder sent anxiety flooding back through her system. Right, the gala. Can't wait. You'll be fine, Elena. The way he said her name made something flutter in her chest. She ignored it and left before he could see her blush. Saturday arrived too quickly. Elena spent the morning trying to distract herself by playing with Rosie in the garden, but her mind kept drifting to the evening ahead. The dress hanging in her closet. The people who would be judging her. The performance she'd have to give. By 4 o'clock, Mrs. Kovac declared it was time to start getting ready. This is going to take 3 hours? Elena asked. If we're lucky. Mrs. Kovac steered her toward the bathroom. First, a bath. There are oils in the cabinet. Use the lavender. I know how to take a bath. Do you know how to take a bath that makes you look like you've never worked a day in your life? Mrs. Kovac raised an eyebrow. Because that's what we're going for. The bath did help, even if Elena felt ridiculous sitting in scented water while Mrs. Kovac laid out makeup and hair tools like surgical instruments. Afterward, wrapped in a robe that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe used to, Elena sat at the vanity and let the older woman work. You have good bone structure, Mrs. Kovac observed, applying something to Elena's face with a brush. Strong features. We'll play those up. I look tired. Everyone looks tired. That's what makeup is for. She tilted Elena's chin up. Hold still. The process felt endless. Foundation, concealer, powder, eyeshadow in shades Elena couldn't name. Mrs. Kovac worked with the focus of an artist, occasionally stepping back to assess her work before continuing. Can I ask you something? Elena said during a pause. Of course. How long have you worked for Damien? Mrs. Kovac's hands didn't stop moving. 8 years. What's he like? As a boss, I mean. Fair, demanding. He expects excellence, but he pays for it. She picked up a different brush. Why do you ask? I'm trying to figure him out. He's so hard to read. Mr. Volkov keeps his cards close. Always has. Mrs. Kovac's expression softened slightly. But he's not cruel, and he protects what's his. I'm not his. Aren't you? You're wearing his ring, living in his house, raising your daughter under his roof. She met Elena's eyes in the mirror. Whether you like it or not, you're his now, at least for the next 3 years. The words should have made Elena angry. Instead, they just made her feel trapped all over again. Mrs. Kovac finished the makeup and moved on to hair. She twisted and pinned and sprayed until Elena's dark hair was swept up in an elegant style that looked effortless but probably wasn't. There, Mrs. Kovac said finally. Look. Elena opened her eyes and barely recognized herself. The woman in the mirror looked sophisticated, polished, like someone who belonged at fancy parties. The makeup had transformed her face, highlighting cheekbones she didn't know she had and making her eyes look huge. I look different, she said quietly. You look like Mrs. Volkov. Mrs. Kovac handed her the dress. Now put this on and complete the transformation. The dress fit perfectly, hugging curves Elena usually tried to hide. The midnight blue brought out something in her skin tone, made her look less washed out. The shoes were tall enough to make her wobble, but not so high she'd break an ankle. Mrs. Kovac added jewelry, simple but clearly expensive, diamond earrings, a delicate bracelet. The wedding ring Damien had mentioned getting properly made had arrived earlier that week, a platinum band with a stone so large Elena was afraid to wear it anywhere. Perfect, Mrs. Kovac declared. He'll be impressed. I'm not trying to impress him. Maybe not, but you will anyway. A knock at the door made them both turn. Damien's voice came through. Are you ready? The car is waiting. Elena took a breath, smoothed the dress, and opened the door. Damien stood in the hallway wearing a tuxedo that made him look even more intimidating than usual. His pale eyes swept over her once, quick but thorough. You look acceptable, he said. Elena felt her shoulders drop. Just acceptable? I meant that as a compliment. You're terrible at compliments. I'm aware. He offered his arm. Shall we? Elena took it, hyper-aware of the solid warmth of him through the expensive fabric. They descended the stairs together, and Elena caught their reflection in the hall mirror. They looked like they belonged together, like a real couple heading to a real event. The illusion was almost convincing. The gala was held at a hotel downtown that made Damien's mansion look modest. Chandeliers dripped from the ceiling. Marble columns lined the ballroom. Everywhere Elena looked, people in expensive clothes held champagne glasses and spoke in the kind of quiet voices that suggested they owned the world. Her hand tightened on Damien's arm. Breathe, he murmured. You're doing fine. We just walked in, and you haven't fainted yet. That's progress. She almost laughed. Almost. They moved through the crowd, and Elena felt eyes following them, watching, judging. Damien handled it with ease, nodding to people he recognized, stopping occasionally for brief conversations. Damien! A woman in red approached, air-kissing both his cheeks. I was wondering if you'd actually show up. Victoria, you look well. You're a terrible liar. Victoria's sharp gaze landed on Elena. And who is this? My wife, Elena. Victoria's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. Wife? When did this happen? Recently. How recent? Recent enough? Damien's tone suggested the topic was closed. If you'll excuse us. Oh no, you're not getting away that easily. Victoria linked her arm through Elena's, pulling her away from Damien. I want to hear everything. How you two met, how he proposed, all of it. Elena shot Damien a panicked look. He gave her the smallest nod, as if to say, you've got this. We met through friends, Elena said, sticking to the script. It was pretty low-key. Low-key? Damien Volkov doesn't do low-key. Victoria steered her toward the bar. Come on, I need champagne, and you need to tell me how you landed the most eligible bachelor in the city. I didn't land anyone, we just... Don't be modest. Do you know how many women have tried to get their hooks into him, and you just waltzed in and sealed the deal? Victoria accepted 2 champagne flutes from the bartender and handed one to Elena. I'm impressed. And curious. Very, very curious. Elena took a sip of champagne, trying to buy time. The bubbles burned her throat. There's not much to tell. There's always something to tell. What do you do? Where are you from? Any family I should know about? The questions came rapid fire, and Elena struggled to keep up. She gave vague answers, deflected when she could, and tried not to look as out of place as she felt. Finally, Damien appeared at her elbow. Victoria, stop interrogating my wife. I'm not interrogating. I'm getting to know her. There's a difference. There really isn't. He took Elena's champagne glass and set it on a passing tray. We need to make the rounds. You're no fun anymore, Victoria pouted. But fine. Go schmooze. I'll catch up with Elena later. As they walked away, Elena exhaled shakily. That was terrifying. You did well. She asked about 30 questions in 5 minutes. Victoria asks everyone 30 questions in 5 minutes. It's her primary form of communication. Damien guided her toward a group of older men in dark suits. These next ones will be worse. Just smile and let me talk. He wasn't kidding. The conversations blurred together. Business deals Elena didn't understand, people whose names she forgot immediately, discussions about markets and investments that made her head spin. She stood beside Damien, smiled when appropriate, and tried not to think about how much she wanted to go home. Then someone mentioned Marcus. Shame about that Chen fellow, one of the men was saying. I heard he took off with quite a bit of money. Elena's blood went cold. Damien's hand found the small of her back, steady and warm. Ancient history, he said smoothly. Not worth discussing. Still, must have been awkward for you, having your wife's former... I said it's not worth discussing. Damien's voice didn't rise, but something in his tone made the man go pale. Is that clear? Of course. My apologies. The group dispersed quickly after that. Damien kept his hand on Elena's back, steering her toward a quiet corner. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Everyone knows." Her voice came out thin. "They all know about Marcus, about what happened. Some of them suspect. Very few know the full story. That man clearly did. Richard knows because he enjoys gossip, and because he's an idiot who doesn't understand when to keep his mouth shut." Damien turned her to face him. "Look at me." Elena forced herself to meet his eyes. "You did nothing wrong," he said firmly. "Marcus made his choices. You were a victim of them. Anyone who judges you for that isn't worth your concern." "Easy for you to say. You're not the one everyone's whispering about." "Yes, I am. I married a woman no one's heard of after being single for years. They're absolutely whispering." His mouth curved slightly. "The difference is, I don't care what they think." "I wish I could do that." "You can. You just choose not to." He glanced over her shoulder. "Come on. I want you to meet someone who might actually be pleasant." The someone turned out to be an older couple, warm and welcoming in a way that made Elena's shoulders relax slightly. They asked her about Rosie, seemed genuinely interested in her answers, and didn't once bring up Marcus or money or anything uncomfortable. By the time dinner was announced, Elena felt marginally less like she was drowning. The meal was elaborate, course after course of food Elena barely tasted. Damien sat beside her, occasionally murmuring explanations of who people were or what certain conversations meant. His hand rested on the back of her chair, not quite touching her, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of it. It should have felt intrusive. Instead, it felt oddly grounding. After dinner came dancing. Elena's stomach dropped when Damien stood and offered his hand. "I don't know how to dance," she hissed. "Not like this. It's easy. Just follow my lead." "That's what people say when it's not easy. Trust me." She didn't, not really, but she took his hand anyway because refusing would draw more attention than stumbling through a dance. He led her to the floor, where other couples were already swaying to music played by a live orchestra. His hand settled on her waist, the other holding hers. Elena tried to remember what she'd seen in movies, where to put her feet, how to move. "Stop thinking," Damien said quietly. "Just move with me." "I'm going to step on your feet. Then I'll survive." Despite her fears, it wasn't as bad as she'd expected. Damien led firmly enough that she didn't have to think too hard, just follow the pressure of his hand and try not to trip. They moved around the floor and Elena found herself relaxing incrementally. "See," Damien said, "you're not terrible at this." High praise. "I'm serious. You're doing well tonight, better than I expected." "Still not great at compliments." His mouth twitched. "I'm working on it." They danced in silence for a moment. Elena became aware of how close they were, how his hand spanned almost her entire waist, how she could smell his cologne, something cedar and sharp that she was starting to associate with safety. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Always." "Why did you really need a wife?" The business partner's explanation doesn't feel complete. Damien's expression closed off slightly. "That's all you need to know." "Come on, we're married. I think I deserve more than the sanitized version." He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "I have investments in several countries with conservative cultural expectations. Being unmarried past a certain age raises questions about stability, trustworthiness. A family man is given opportunities a bachelor isn't. So it really is just about appearances. Everything in my world is about appearances. Reality is secondary." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." His eyes met hers. "But it's also effective." The song ended. Damien stepped back, creating distance again. Elena felt the loss of his warmth immediately. "I need to speak with someone," he said. "Will you be all right for a few minutes?" "I'll survive." He nodded and disappeared into the crowd. Elena stood alone on the edge of the dance floor, trying not to feel abandoned. "Mrs. Volkov?" She turned to find a young man, mid-20s, expensive suit, friendly smile. "I'm James Kensington. My father does business with your husband." He offered his hand. "I wanted to introduce myself." Elena shook it, grateful for a friendly face. "Nice to meet you. I have to say, you've caused quite a stir tonight. Damien getting married was not on anyone's bingo card. So I've gathered." For what it's worth, I think it's great. He's always so serious. Maybe you'll loosen him up. James gestured toward the bar. Can I get you a drink? You look like you could use one. Elena hesitated, then nodded. Sure. Thank you. They walked to the bar together, James chatting easily about nothing important. It was nice, actually. Normal. The first normal conversation she'd had all night. She didn't see the woman approaching until it was too late. Well, well. The voice was cold, sharp. So this is the famous new wife. Elena turned to find a stunning blonde in a dress that probably cost more than Elena's car. The woman looked her up and down with undisguised contempt. I'm sorry, Elena said. Have we met? Not officially. I'm Natasha Fedorova. She said it like Elena should recognize the name. When Elena's face stayed blank, Natasha's smile turned vicious. Damien's ex-girlfriend. Elena's stomach dropped. Oh. Oh, indeed, sighed. Natasha moved closer, invading Elena's space. I have to say, you're not what I expected. I thought he'd upgrade, not downgrade. James shifted uncomfortably beside Elena. Natasha, maybe what, James? Maybe I should welcome her to the family? Pretend I'm happy about this? Natasha's eyes were hard. She trapped him. Some nobody with a kid probably got pregnant on purpose. It's pathetic. Heat flooded Elena's face. I didn't trap anyone. Please, you think Damien would marry someone like you otherwise? You're a charity case, a pity project. Natasha leaned in. And when he gets bored, and he will get bored, he'll throw you back to whatever gutter he found you in. Elena's hands were shaking. She wanted to defend herself, to say something cutting back, but her throat had closed up. Then Damien's voice cut through the tension like a knife. Natasha, walk away. The blonde spun around. Damien, I was just getting to know your wife. You were insulting her. I heard every word. He stepped between them, his presence suddenly protective. Leave. Now. You can't be serious about her. This whole thing is ridiculous. I won't ask again. Something in his tone made Natasha go pale. She shot Elena one last venomous look, then stalked off, heels clicking against the marble floor. Damien turned to Elena. Are you all right? Fine. The word came out steady even though she felt like she might throw up. I'm fine. You're not. He took her arm. Come on, we're leaving. We can't just leave. People will... I don't care what people think. You've done enough tonight. He guided her toward the exit, not rushing, but not slowing down either. Elena caught glimpses of surprised faces, heard whispered comments, but Damien didn't acknowledge any of it. In the car, Elena finally let herself shake. She pressed her hands together to stop the trembling, but it didn't work. I'm sorry, she said. For what? For not handling that better. For letting her get to me. She's a vicious woman who's angry I moved on. That's not your fault. Damien loosened his tie. I should have warned you she might be there. You dated her? For about 6 months, 2 years ago. It ended badly. She still seems pretty invested. Natasha is invested in the idea of me, not the reality. He looked out the window. She wanted the status, the money, the power. When she realized I wasn't going to give her access to any of it, she tried to manipulate her way in. I ended things. She said I trapped you. She's projecting. That was her strategy, not yours. Elena turned to look at him. Did she actually try to get pregnant on purpose? Among other things. His jaw tightened. It's not a story worth repeating. They drove in silence for a while. Elena watched the city lights blur past, trying to process everything that had happened. The party, the dancing, Natasha's cruel words. Thank you, she said finally, for defending me. You're my wife. Even if it's just on paper, I won't tolerate people disrespecting you. Still, it meant something. He didn't respond, but something in his expression softened slightly. When they got home, Elena kicked off the painful shoes the moment they stepped inside. Damien shrugged out of his jacket, draping it over the stair railing. You did well tonight, he said. Better than well, actually. I barely survived. You survived a room full of sharks with perfect composure. That's more than most people manage their first time. Elena looked at him, this complicated man she'd married out of desperation. He'd been kind tonight, protective, almost like he actually cared. Can I ask you something else? She said. It's becoming a habit. Why did you end things with Natasha? Really? Damien was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, because she saw me as a means to an end. Every conversation, every moment together, it was all calculated, strategic. I got tired of wondering what she really wanted. And you think I'm different? I know you're different. You signed a contract that explicitly states this marriage ends in 3 years. You're not trying to manipulate your way into my life permanently. You're just trying to survive. He started up the stairs. That's refreshingly honest. Elena watched him go, feeling something shift in her chest, something complicated and confusing that she wasn't ready to examine. Upstairs, she checked on Rosie, fast asleep, surrounded by stuffed animals, then went to her own room. She peeled off the beautiful dress, removed the expensive jewelry, scrubbed the makeup from her face. In the mirror, she looked like herself again. Tired, uncertain, but herself. Her phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. How did it go? Elena sat on the edge of the bed, thinking about how to answer. The gala had been terrifying and overwhelming, and Natasha had been cruel, and she danced with Damien like they were actually married. It was complicated, she typed back. Tell you tomorrow. She set the phone aside and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, Rosie would meet the tutor. Next week, there would probably be another event, another performance, another test of how well she could play the role of Mrs. Volkov. But tonight, for just a moment, it hadn't felt entirely like playing, and that scared her more than anything else. The tutor arrived on Tuesday morning carrying a bag full of colorful books and wearing a smile that seemed genuine. Her name was Claire Stevens, mid-40s with kind eyes and the patient demeanor of someone who'd spent years working with young children. Elena met her at the door, Rosie hiding behind her legs. Mrs. Volkov, it's lovely to meet you. Claire extended her hand. And this must be Rosie. Rosie peeked out, curious but cautious. Hi, she said quietly. I brought some books I thought you might like, Claire said, crouching down to Rosie's level. Do you want to see them? Rosie looked up at Elena, who nodded. It's okay, baby. Within minutes, Claire had Rosie sitting on the library floor, looking through a picture book about a family of rabbits. Elena watched from the doorway, arms crossed, protective instincts on high alert. She's good, Damien said from behind her. Elena jumped slightly. She hadn't heard him approach. You're home early. I wanted to be here for this. He leaned against the doorframe, watching Claire and Rosie with an expression Elena couldn't quite read. You approve? I don't know yet. Ask me in an hour. But by the end of that hour, even Elena had to admit that Claire was perfect. Patient without being condescending, engaging without being overwhelming. Rosie was already asking when Claire would come back. Wednesday and Friday, Claire said, packing up her materials. Same time, if that works for you. It works, Elena said, then remembered herself. Thank you for being so good with her. She's a bright little girl. This is going to be fun. Claire smiled at Rosie. See you Wednesday, okay? Okay, Rosie waved enthusiastically. After Claire left, Rosie bounced around the library, showing Damien the book Claire had let her keep. He listened with what seemed like genuine interest, occasionally asking questions that made Rosie explain things in more detail. Elena found herself watching them together, this powerful, dangerous man and her small daughter, and feeling something uncomfortable twist in her chest. Mommy, did you see the rabbits? Rosie demanded. I did. They're very cute. Claire said we're going to learn about numbers next time, and maybe play a counting game. Rosie climbed onto the couch next to Damien, completely at ease. Do you know how to count? I do, he said seriously, but I'm always willing to learn more. I can teach you. I'd appreciate that. Elena left them there and went to find Mrs. Kovac in the kitchen. The older woman was preparing lunch, chopping vegetables with practiced efficiency. The tutor went well? Mrs. Kovac asked without looking up. Yeah, she's good. Elena sat at the kitchen island. Rosie likes her. And you? I like that Rosie likes her. Mrs. Kovac's mouth twitched. That's not the same thing. I know. Elena traced patterns on the marble countertop. It's just hard, accepting help, especially from him. Why? Because nothing's free. There's always a cost. Mr. Volkov isn't charging you for the tutor. Not with money, but with expectations, with obligations, with... Elena stopped, not sure how to articulate the feeling. I just don't want Rosie to get attached to something that's going to disappear in 3 years. Mrs. Kovacs set down her knife. May I be honest with you? Please. You're so busy protecting yourself from getting hurt that you're missing what's actually happening. She gestured toward the library where Rosie's laughter could be heard. Your daughter is happy. She's safe. She has opportunities she wouldn't have had otherwise. Maybe instead of waiting for the other shoe to drop, you could just accept that some good things don't have ulterior motives. The words hit harder than Elena expected. You think I'm being paranoid. I think you're being careful. But there's a difference between careful and closed off. Mrs. Kovac returned to her vegetables. Mr. Volkov is a complicated man, but in 8 years, I've never seen him be cruel to someone who didn't deserve it. If he says he'll protect you and your daughter, he means it. For 3 years. That's longer than most people's promises last. Elena wanted to argue, but she couldn't find the words. Instead, she just sat there, listening to Rosie's voice counting loudly from the other room, and wondered if Mrs. Kovac might be right. The weeks that followed developed their own rhythm. Claire came 3 times a week, and Rosie flourished under the attention. Damien continued his pattern of early departures and late returns, though he made a point of having dinner with them most nights. Elena found herself settling into the routine despite her best efforts to remain detached. Then one Friday night, everything shifted. Elena had put Rosie to bed and was reading in the library when she heard raised voices from Damien's study. She tried to ignore it. His business wasn't her concern, but the conversation was getting louder. Then something crashed, glass breaking. Elena was on her feet before she consciously decided to move. She reached Damien's study just as the door flew open, and a man she didn't recognize stormed out, face red with anger. "This isn't over, Volkov!" he shouted over his shoulder. Damien appeared in the doorway, tie loosened, jaw tight. "Yes, it is, and if you come to my home again without an invitation, you'll regret it." The man left, slamming the front door hard enough to rattle the windows. Elena stood frozen in the hallway, heart pounding. Damien noticed her, and his expression shifted. "How long have you been there?" "Long enough." "Who was that?" "No one important." He seemed pretty important based on all the yelling. Damien rubbed a hand over his face, suddenly looking exhausted. "A former business partner who made some poor decisions and wants me to bail him out. I declined." It sounded like more than that. It wasn't. He started to close the study door, then paused. "I'm sorry you heard that. It won't happen again." "Damien, wait." Elena moved closer. "Are you okay? Your hand is bleeding." He glanced down at his knuckles, where blood was seeping through a cut. "It's fine." "It's not fine. Come on." She grabbed his arm before he could protest and pulled him toward the kitchen. He followed, surprisingly compliant. Elena sat him at the island and went searching for the first aid kit Mrs. Kovac kept under the sink. "I can handle it myself," Damien said. "I'm sure you can, but I'm handling it anyway." She found the kit and returned, taking his hand. The cut wasn't deep, but glass was embedded in the skin. "What did you punch?" "A whiskey glass." Not my smartest moment. Clearly. She cleaned the wound carefully, picking out small shards with tweezers. Damien watched her work, silent. "This is going to sting." She applied antiseptic. He didn't flinch. "You're good at this," he observed. "Rosie's 4. I've had practice with scraped knees and splinters." She wrapped his hand in gauze. "There, try not to punch any more glassware." "I'll do my best." They sat in silence for a moment. Elena could see the tension in Damien's shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. Whatever that argument had been about, it had gotten to him. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked. "No." "Okay." She started packing up the first aid kit. "He accused me of stealing from him," Damien said suddenly. "Said I manipulated contracts and cut him out of profits he was owed. All lies, but he's threatening to go to authorities, make a formal complaint." "Can he actually do that?" "He can file paperwork. It won't go anywhere. The contracts are airtight, and I have documentation for everything." Damien's jaw clenched. "But it's the principle. I gave him opportunities when no one else would. I trusted him, and this is how he repays it." "Sounds like Marcus," Elena said quietly. Damien looked at her sharply. What? Blaming someone else for his own failures, making himself the victim when he's actually the one who screwed up. She met his eyes. Some people can't accept responsibility for their choices. He stared at her for a long moment. Then something in his expression softened. You understand. More than you'd think. She hesitated, then added, I'm sorry that happened, that someone you trusted betrayed you. It's business. It happens. That doesn't make it hurt less. The vulnerability that flickered across his face was gone so quickly, Elena almost thought she'd imagined it. But it had been there, real and raw and human. Thank you, he said, for the bandage and for listening. Anytime. He stood, flexing his injured hand. I should finish some work. Good night, Elena. Good night. She watched him leave, then sat alone in the quiet kitchen, trying to process what had just happened. She'd seen behind his mask for just a moment, seen the person underneath all the cold control. And it had made him seem less like a stranger and more like someone she could actually know. The next morning, Elena woke to Rosie bouncing on her bed. Mommy, wake up! I'm awake. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Damien said we can go to the city today. All of us. He said there's a museum with dinosaurs and we can see them if you say yes. Please say yes. Elena sat up, brain still foggy. He said that. Yes. He's downstairs eating breakfast and he said to come ask you. Can we go, please? Elena rubbed her eyes. Let me talk to him first. Go brush your teeth. Rosie sprinted off, already planning her dinosaur adventure. Elena dragged herself out of bed and downstairs, still in pajamas. Damien sat in the dining room with coffee and a newspaper. He looked up when she entered. Dinosaurs? Elena said. The Natural History Museum has an impressive paleontology wing. I thought Rosie might enjoy it. Since when do you take Saturdays off? Since I realized I haven't had a full day off in 3 months. He set down the paper. If you'd rather not go? No, I want to. It's just unexpected. Good unexpected or bad unexpected? Elena considered. Good, I think. Rosie's already vibrating with excitement. Then we'll leave in an hour. The museum was crowded with families, kids running between exhibits with parents trailing behind. Rosie's eyes went huge the moment they walked into the dinosaur hall and saw the massive T-Rex skeleton looming above them. So big, she breathed. That's a Tyrannosaurus Rex, Damien said. One of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs that ever lived. What's carnivorous mean? It means it ate meat. Rosie's eyes got even wider. Like chicken nuggets? Elena laughed. Sort of, but bigger. They spent 2 hours wandering through exhibits, Damien explaining things in terms Rosie could understand while Elena watched in mild amazement. She hadn't expected him to know so much about dinosaurs or to be so patient with Rosie's endless questions. How do you know all this? She asked when Rosie ran ahead to look at a Triceratops skeleton. I read a lot as a child. Dinosaurs were a particular interest. You were a dinosaur kid? Is that surprising? A little. I'm having trouble picturing mini Damien obsessing over fossils. His mouth curved slightly. I was a strange child. Quiet. Serious. More interested in books than people. What changed? Life. Reality. The understanding that books don't prepare you for actual survival. He watched Rosie point excitedly at something on the skeleton, but I still remember finding the subject fascinating. They continued through the museum, stopping at the gift shop on the way out. Rosie found a stuffed Triceratops and hugged it like it was the most precious thing in the world. Can I get it? She asked Elena. Elena checked the price tag and winced. $25 for a stuffed animal was ridiculous. Maybe something smaller. Get it, Damien said. He was already pulling out his wallet. You don't have to do that. I know I don't have to. I want to. He handed his card to the cashier before Elena could argue. Rosie clutched her new dinosaur. Thank you, Damien. You're welcome. Outside, the afternoon sun was warm. They walked to a nearby park, and Rosie ran ahead to the playground. This was nice, Elena said, settling onto a bench where she could watch Rosie. Thank you for suggesting it. You sound surprised. I am a little. This feels almost normal. We're 3 people spending a Saturday together. That's fairly normal. We're a fake married couple and a 4-year-old spending a Saturday pretending to be a real family. That's not normal at all. Damien sat beside her, stretching his long legs out. Does it matter, real or fake, if everyone involved is enjoying themselves? Philosophically complicated question for a dinosaur museum trip. I contain multitudes. Elena laughed despite herself. Did you just quote Walt Whitman? I told you, I read a lot as a child. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Rosie go down the slide over and over, each time announcing it was the best one yet. Can I ask you something? Elena said eventually. You ask me a lot of things, and you rarely answer honestly. Fair point. What do you want to know? Why did you really suggest this today? The museum, I mean. Damien was quiet for a moment. Yesterday you saw me at my worst. Angry, losing control, punching glassware like a teenager. I wanted to show you that's not all I am. The honesty surprised her. I didn't think less of you for that. Didn't you? No, I thought you seemed human. She turned to look at him. You're always so controlled, so measured. Seeing you actually feel something was kind of a relief. Most people prefer the controlled version. Most people don't live with you. He met her gaze and something passed between them. Something Elena couldn't name but felt in her chest like a physical pull. Then Rosie came running over, breaking the moment. Mommy, there's an ice cream truck. Can we get ice cream? Elena looked at Damien. He shrugged. Why not? They got ice cream, chocolate for Rosie, vanilla for Elena, nothing for Damien, until Rosie insisted he try hers, and he took a small bite to appease her. They sat on the grass and let Rosie chatter about every dinosaur she'd seen, every fact she'd learned, every amazing thing about the day. When they finally headed back to the car, Rosie was fighting sleep, clutching her stuffed triceratops. She made it about 10 minutes into the drive before conking out completely. She's going to be impossible to wake up for dinner, Elena said, glancing back at her sleeping daughter. Then we'll skip dinner, or eat later. It's not that important. You're being remarkably flexible today. Don't get used to it. But there was warmth in his voice that hadn't been there before. Back at the estate, Damien carried Rosie upstairs without being asked. Elena followed, watching him lay her daughter gently on her bed, still clutching the dinosaur. She's getting attached to you, Elena said quietly in the hallway. Is that a problem? I don't know yet. Ask me in 3 years when we're explaining why you're not around anymore. We'll handle it when the time comes. For now, let her be happy. He started toward his own wing, then paused. I enjoyed today, more than I expected to. Me too. He nodded and left. Elena went to her room and sat on the edge of the bed, trying to figure out what was happening. She'd agreed to a business arrangement, a transaction, 3 years of playing a role in exchange for safety and money. Feelings weren't supposed to be part of the equation. But sitting in the park today, watching Damien explain dinosaurs to Rosie with unexpected gentleness, something had shifted. Some walls she'd carefully maintained had developed a crack, and she had no idea how to fix it. The following week brought another event, this one a business dinner at an upscale restaurant. Elena wore another dress Mrs. Kovac had procured, emerald green this time, and tried to prepare herself for more scrutiny. But the evening was surprisingly pleasant. The other couples were warm, asked about Rosie with genuine interest, and treated Elena like she belonged there. Damien's hand rested on her lower back throughout dinner, a casual touch that felt increasingly natural. On the drive home, he seemed relaxed in a way she rarely saw. That went well, he observed. It did. Your colleagues are nicer than I expected. Those are my partners, not colleagues. There's a difference. Which is? Partners have your back. Colleagues are just people you work with. Elena processed that. How do you know the difference? Time, trust. Watching how people behave when things go wrong. He glanced at her. The Andersons, the couple sitting across from us, lost everything in the financial crash 15 years ago. I gave them seed money to rebuild. They've paid it back 3 times over, but more importantly, they're loyal, real loyalty. Like Mrs. Kovac said you value. Exactly. What about me? The question slipped out before Elena could stop it. Do you trust me? Damien was quiet for a long moment. I'm starting to. Even though I'm only here because of a contract? The contract brought you here, but it's not why you're staying. What do you mean? You could have tried to run by now, found a lawyer who'd argue duress, gotten the marriage annulled, taken your chances with debt collectors. He kept his eyes on the road. You haven't. Not because you can't, but because you don't want to. He was right, and that terrified her. Maybe I'm just afraid. Maybe, or maybe you're starting to see that this arrangement isn't as terrible as you thought. Elena didn't have an answer for that. At home, she checked on Rosie, sound asleep, then found herself wandering to Damien's study instead of her own room. He was there, jacket discarded, reading something on his computer. Can't sleep? He asked without looking up. Not yet. She hesitated in the doorway. Can I come in? It's your house too. Elena entered, perching on the edge of the leather couch. I've been thinking about what you said, about why I'm staying. And? You're right, I could have fought this harder, could have found a way out. She picked at a loose thread on her dress. But the truth is, Rosie is happier here than she's ever been. She has stability, opportunities, safety. How do I take that away from her just because I'm scared? Scared of what? Of this becoming real, of forgetting it's temporary. She met his eyes. Of getting used to you. Damien set down the pen he'd been holding. Would that be so terrible? I don't know. Would it? He stood and crossed to the couch, sitting beside her. Not touching, but close enough that Elena could feel the warmth of him. I'm not going to lie to you, he said. This arrangement has an expiration date. That was the agreement, but that doesn't mean the next 3 years have to be miserable. What are you suggesting? That we stop fighting what this is. We're married. We live together. We're raising your daughter together. Maybe instead of constantly reminding ourselves it's fake, we just exist in it. That sounds dangerous. Why? Because what happens when 3 years is up and we've gotten comfortable? When Rosie thinks you're permanent and you disappear? I never said I'd disappear from her life, just from being your husband. Elena blinked. What? The contract says we divorce. It doesn't say I abandon Rosie. If she wants me to stay in her life, as a friend, as someone who cares about her, I will. You'd do that? Why wouldn't I? She's a good kid. I've gotten attached too. Something in Elena's chest cracked open. I don't understand you. I'm not that complicated. Yes, you are. You're terrifying and kind and cold and gentle all at once. You defend me at parties but keep me at arm's length. You buy my daughter stuffed dinosaurs but remind me this is business. Her voice was rising. I can't figure out what you actually want. I want? Damien stopped, jaw working. I don't know what I want. That's the problem. Then we're both lost. They sat in heavy silence. Outside, wind rustled through the trees. The house settled around them with small creaks and sighs. I should go, Elena said finally. It's late. Elena, wait. She paused. Today at the museum, Damien said quietly. When Rosie was playing and you were watching her, you smiled, really smiled. I realized I hadn't seen you do that before. So I want you to do it more. This house, this arrangement, it shouldn't feel like a prison. You deserve to be happy here. Why do you care if I'm happy? He looked at her with those pale, unreadable eyes. Because somewhere in the last month you stopped being a stranger I made a deal with and became someone I actually give a damn about. The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Elena's heart was pounding. That's not in the contract. No, it's not. This is a bad idea. Probably. We should stick to the arrangement, keep it professional. We absolutely should. But neither of them moved. Elena could feel the pull between them, magnetic and terrifying. Then Damien reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers grazing her cheek. Go to bed, Elena, he said softly. Before we both do something we can't take back. She went. But as she lay in her room staring at the ceiling, she knew something fundamental had changed. The contract said 3 years. Her heart was starting to whisper something different, and she had no idea which one to listen to. The next morning, Elena woke to sunlight streaming through windows she'd forgotten to close, and the realization that everything had shifted. Damien's words from the night before echoed in her head, that she'd stopped being a stranger, that he gave a damn about her. The careful distance they'd maintained was crumbling, and Elena wasn't sure if she should try to rebuild it or let it fall completely. She found him in the kitchen, already dressed for work, drinking coffee while reading something on his phone. "Morning," she said, keeping her voice neutral. He looked up, and for just a second, something vulnerable flickered across his face before the mask slid back into place. "Morning. There's fresh coffee." "Thanks." She poured herself a cup, hyper-aware of the space between them. "About last night, we don't have to talk about it." "I think we do." Damien set down his phone. "All right, what do you want to say?" Elena wrapped her hands around the warm mug, gathering her thoughts. "I think you're right, that we've been so busy maintaining walls that we're missing what's actually happening here." "Which is?" "I don't know exactly, but I know I don't hate being married to you anymore. And I know Rosie lights up when you're around, and I know that scares me because in less than 3 years this all ends. It doesn't have to end badly. How does it end well? We get divorced and explain to my daughter why the man she's gotten attached to is leaving. We stay friends and navigate awkward holidays. There's no clean exit from this." Damien was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working like he was trying to figure out what to say. "What if we didn't exit?" Elena's heart stopped. "What? What if when 3 years is up, we evaluate where we are instead of just assuming it's over? The contract is a piece of paper, a safety net for both of us. But it doesn't have to be a death sentence." He moved closer, and Elena had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "I'm not asking you to decide anything now. I'm just saying maybe we don't have to spend the next 3 years counting down to an ending we're not even sure we want. You're talking about making this real. I'm talking about letting it become whatever it's going to become, without fear, without constant second-guessing." Elena's hands were shaking. She set down the coffee cup before she dropped it. "I need time to think about this." "Take all the time you need." Damien checked his watch. "I have meetings all day, but I'll be home for dinner." He started to leave, then turned back. "For what it's worth, you're the first person in years who's made me want something beyond the next business deal. That's not nothing." Then he was gone, leaving Elena alone with her racing thoughts. The weeks that followed were strange and careful, like both of them were testing the boundaries of what they'd admitted. Damien came home earlier more often. They had dinner as a family almost every night. He taught Rosie to play chess, which devolved into games where she made up rules that made no sense, and he went along with it anyway. Elena caught herself watching him more, noticing small things. The way his voice softened when he talked to Rosie. How he always refilled Elena's coffee without asking. The scar on his left hand that he'd never explained. She was learning him, layer by careful layer, and it terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Then Marcus resurfaced. Elena was in the garden with Rosie when Mrs. Kovac came out, face tight with concern. "There's someone at the gate," she said. "He's asking for you. Says his name is Marcus Chen." Ice flooded Elena's veins. "What?" "Security stopped him, but he's insisting he needs to speak with you. Something about unfinished business." Rosie looked up from the flower bed where she'd been digging. "Who's Marcus?" "No one important, baby." Elena's mind was racing. "Mrs. Kovac, can you keep Rosie inside for a bit?" "Of course," the older woman held out her hand. "Come on, sweetheart, let's make cookies." Rosie went willingly, already chattering about what kind of cookies she wanted to make. Once they were inside, Elena pulled out her phone with trembling hands and called Damien. He answered on the first ring. "What's wrong?" "Marcus is here, at the gate. He wants to talk to me." Silence. Then, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't go near him." "I'm not planning to." "Elena, I mean it. Stay in the house. I'll handle this." "He's my problem." "He stopped being just your problem the day you married me. Let me handle it." The line went dead. Elena stood in the garden, arms wrapped around herself, trying to process that Marcus had actually shown up. After everything he'd done, after abandoning her and stealing millions and disappearing, he had the audacity to come here. She went inside but couldn't sit still. She paced the living room, checking her phone every 30 seconds, jumping at every sound. Finally, she heard the gravel crunch of Damien's car arriving. He came through the front door with 2 of his security team, his expression carved from stone. "Where is he?" "Still at the gate. Security wouldn't let him through." "Good." Damien pulled off his jacket, tossed it over a chair. "Stay here." I want to come with you. No. Damien, please, I need to see him. I need to. Her voice cracked. I need to look him in the eye and not fall apart. He studied her face, and something in his expression softened. All right, but you stay beside me, and if I tell you to go back to the house, you go. Understood? Understood? They walked to the gate together, Damien's security flanking them. Through the ornate iron bars, Elena could see Marcus standing next to a rental car, looking smaller and shabbier than she remembered. He'd lost weight. His expensive suits were gone, replaced by jeans and a wrinkled button-down. When he saw Elena, his face lit up. Elena, thank God! I've been trying to reach you for weeks. She stared at him, this man she'd almost married, and felt nothing but cold anger. What do you want? Her voice came out steadier than she expected. I want to explain about what happened, about why I had to leave. Marcus moved closer to the gate. It wasn't what you think. I was in trouble and I panicked, and I'm so sorry I left you like that. You stole $12 million, Damien said, voice flat and dangerous. And you left her to take the fall. Marcus's eyes flicked to him nervously. I don't know what you've been told, but I didn't steal anything. There was a misunderstanding with some investments. Don't lie to her. Damien's tone could have frozen hell. I have documentation of every fraudulent transfer you made, every falsified account, every client you scammed. You're a thief, and the only reason you're not in prison is because I chose not to press charges. Because you wanted her for yourself. Marcus's mask slipped, showing the desperation underneath. You swooped in the second I was gone, married her before the wedding flowers even died. That's not coincidence. You're right, Damien said. It's not. It's opportunity. You left a debt and a woman who deserved better. I offered her a solution. A solution? Marcus laughed bitterly. You trapped her, probably threatened her, held the debt over her head until she had no choice. Is that what you think happened? Elena stepped forward, hands clenched. That I was so helpless I let myself be bullied into this? I know you, Elena. You're not strong enough to stand up to someone like him. The words hit like a slap. For a moment, Elena was back at the altar, trembling and humiliated, believing she was exactly what Marcus said, weak, helpless, unable to save herself. Then Damien's hand found the small of her back, steady and warm, and something in her snapped. You don't know me at all, she said, voice gaining strength. You knew the version of me that was desperate enough to believe your lies. The woman who thought someone like you could actually care about her. But that person is gone. Elena, please. I chose this marriage. Damien gave me the terms and I accepted them because I'm smart enough to recognize a good deal when I see one. My daughter has stability. I have security. And I'm not drowning in debt because of your mistakes. She moved even closer to the gate. You want to know the difference between you and him? He's been honest from the start. Cold, yes. Demanding, yes. But honest. You lied every single day we were together. Marcus's face had gone red. You're making a mistake. He's dangerous, Elena. You think he married you out of kindness? Men like him don't do anything without a reason. You're right, he had reasons. And he told me what they were instead of lying about them. Elena felt Damien's hand press more firmly against her back, anchoring her. Now get off this property before I call the police myself and tell them exactly where to find the man who stole millions and fled the country. You wouldn't. Try me. Marcus looked between them, and Elena saw the moment he realized he'd lost. Whatever he'd come here hoping to accomplish, to manipulate her, to get money, to cause trouble, it wasn't going to work. You deserve each other, he spat. Both of you. Enjoy your fake marriage and your fake life. He got in the rental car and peeled out, gravel spraying. Elena watched him disappear down the tree-lined drive and felt something loosen in her chest. She'd stood up to him, hadn't fallen apart, hadn't begged him to explain or apologize or make it make sense. She'd been strong. Damien's hand moved from her back to her shoulder, turning her to face him. Are you all right? I think so. She let out a shaky breath. That was terrifying. You handled it perfectly. I almost didn't. When he said I wasn't strong enough, I almost believed him. But you didn't. That's what matters. His eyes searched her face. You're stronger than you know, Elena. I've been trying to tell you that since the day we met. Elena looked up at this complicated, dangerous man who'd somehow become the person she relied on most. Thank you for being here, for backing me up. Always. The word was simple but weighted with promise. They walked back to the house together, and Elena realized that for the first time since Marcus had left her at that altar, she felt free. Not because the debt was forgiven, or because she lived in a mansion, or because she had financial security, but because she'd proven to herself that she could stand on her own 2 feet and not break. That night, after Rosie was asleep, Elena found Damien in the library with a book and a glass of whiskey. "Can we talk?" she asked from the doorway. He set down the book immediately. "Of course." Elena came in, closed the door, and sat in the chair across from him. "I've been thinking about what you said, about letting this become whatever it's going to become. And? I'm scared. I'm still scared, but I'm tired of being scared more than I'm living." She twisted her wedding ring, the real one, not the too big temporary one from that first day. "Rosie asked me today if you were going to be her daddy now. Not her father, but her daddy. The person who's there every day." "What did you tell her?" "I told her the truth, that you're my husband and you care about her and you're part of our family now." Elena's eyes stung. "And then I realized I meant it. Somewhere in the last few months, you stopped being the stranger I made a deal with and became family." Damien set down his glass and moved to kneel in front of her chair, taking her hands. "Elena, let me finish, please." She took a shaky breath. "The contract says 3 years, and maybe we get to the end and we've driven each other crazy and we're ready to walk away. But maybe we don't. Maybe we get there and we've built something real, something worth keeping." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to try, really try. Not just coexist in the same house and count down to an expiration date, but actually build a life together." She squeezed his hands. "I'm saying I'm falling for you, Damien Volkov, and it terrifies me, but I'm done running from it." His eyes closed briefly, and when they opened, they were blazing with something Elena had never seen before. "I need you to understand something. I'm not an easy man. I'm controlling and demanding, and I have enemies who might try to use you to get to me. Choosing this, choosing me, it's not going to be simple." "I don't want simple. Simple was Marcus, and look how that turned out." Elena reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the sharp line of his jaw. "I want real, complicated, messy, real." "I've never done this before," he admitted quietly. "Felt this way about someone. Let myself want something beyond business and power." "Then we'll figure it out together." Damien surged forward, kissing her with an intensity that stole her breath. Elena kissed him back, pouring months of tension and fear and reluctant affection into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Damien rested his forehead against hers. "I'm going to mess this up," he said. "Probably multiple times." "Same, but we'll fix it. That's what people who care about each other do." "I more than care about you, Elena. That's the terrifying part." "Good terrifying or bad terrifying?" "I'll let you know when I figure it out." They stayed like that for a long moment, wrapped up in each other, the library quiet around them. Outside, the estate's grounds were dark except for the security lights. In her room down the hall, Rosie slept peacefully, safe and loved. Everything Elena had been afraid of was happening. She was falling in love with her husband. Their contract marriage was becoming real. The temporary arrangement was starting to feel permanent, and for the first time, she wasn't trying to fight it. The next few months unfolded like a different life. Damien made good on his promise to let their relationship develop naturally. He moved slower than Elena expected, respecting boundaries she didn't even know she had, waiting for her to close the distance between them. They had their first real date on a Thursday, dinner at a restaurant where they'd gone for business, but this time it was just them. No performance, no audience, just conversation that lasted until the staff started cleaning around them. Their second date was a disaster involving miniature golf, where Damien was aggressively competitive and Elena laughed so hard she cried. Their third was watching movies on the couch after Rosie went to bed, Elena falling asleep against his shoulder and waking up the next morning in her own bed with no memory of how she got there. Slowly, carefully, they built something neither of them had expected. Rosie noticed the change immediately. She started calling Damien Daddy, a compromise she'd invented herself. She demanded he read her bedtime stories and started saving artwork to show him specifically. Watching them together made Elena's chest ache in the best way. Sarah was less convinced. "You're falling for him," she said over coffee one afternoon, Rosie playing in the garden visible through the window. "I know. Elena, this was supposed to be temporary." "I know that too." "So what happens when the contract is up?" Elena set down her cup. "We've talked about it, about making this real, actually staying married." Sarah's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "I think so. I mean, we haven't decided anything concrete, but the option's there." "Do you love him?" It was the question Elena had been avoiding asking herself. But sitting here with her best friend, she couldn't dodge it anymore. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I think I do." "Does he love you?" "He hasn't said it, but he shows it. In the way he takes care of us, the way he looks at Rosie, the way he holds my hand at events like he's afraid I'll disappear." Elena smiled despite herself. "He's not good with words, but his actions say plenty." Sarah reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "I just don't want you to get hurt." "I might. Love doesn't come with guarantees." Elena thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, standing at an altar in a borrowed dress, believing she needed someone to save her. "But I'd rather take the risk than spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been." "When did you get so brave?" "When I realized I had to be. For Rosie. For myself." She paused. "Damien helped with that. He sees me differently than anyone else ever has. Not as someone who needs saving, but as someone capable of saving myself." "That's actually beautiful," Sarah admitted. "I hate it, but it's beautiful." Elena laughed. "You don't hate it. I hate that I'm going to have to admit I was wrong about him. But yeah, I don't actually hate it." Later that night, Elena found Damien in his study, working late as usual. She knocked on the half-open door. "Busy?" He looked up and his expression softened. "Never too busy for you." "That's a very husband thing to say." "I'm practicing." He closed his laptop. "What's on your mind?" Elena came in and sat on the edge of his desk. "I've been thinking about the contract, about what happens when year 3 comes up." Damien's expression was carefully neutral. And I think we should tear it up." His eyebrows rose. "What?" "Not the legal parts, the debt forgiveness, the financial protections, all that stays. But the part that says we have to divorce. I want to get rid of that." "Elena, let me finish. I know we're supposed to have more time to decide. I know we agreed not to rush anything. But I don't need 3 years to know that I want this to be real. I want to wake up every morning and not count down to an ending. I want to build a life with you without an expiration date hanging over us." Damien stood, moving around the desk to stand in front of her. "Are you sure? Because once we do this, once we make it real, I'm not letting you go." "Good. I don't want you to." He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "I love you. I should have said it sooner, but I wanted to be sure you were ready to hear it." Elena's breath caught. "You love me?" "Desperately, completely, in ways I didn't know I was capable of." He kissed her forehead. "You've transformed my life, Elena. This house was just a building before you and Rosie. Now it's home." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I love you too, so much it scares me." "Good. We'll be terrified together." He kissed her then, slow and deep and full of promise. When they broke apart, Elena was smiling through her tears. "So we're doing this?" she asked, "making it official?" "We're already married. It doesn't get more official." "You know what I mean." "I do. And yes, we're doing this." He pulled her close, and Elena let herself sink into the solid warmth of him. "I'll have my lawyer draw up an amendment to the contract. Something that makes this permanent. Real." "What about the settlement? The money I was supposed to get after 3 years?" "I'll set up a trust in your name. So you always have security, always have options. I never want you to feel trapped." Elena pulled back to look at him. "I don't feel trapped. For the first time in my life, I feel free." 2 weeks later, they signed the new agreement. It was much shorter than the original, just a few pages outlining financial protections and provisions for Rosie, with all mentions of divorce removed. Damien's lawyer seemed baffled. Elena's lawyer seemed thrilled. Patricia Stern just smiled like she'd predicted this outcome all along. "Congratulations," she said, shaking both their hands. "This time you're actually choosing each other." She was right. The first time they'd been driven by desperation and necessity. This time was different. This time was real. That night, they celebrated quietly. Just the three of them, Elena, Damien, and Rosie, having dinner in the garden under string lights Mrs. Kovac had helped hang. Rosie was oblivious to the significance, just happy to eat outside and chase fireflies afterward. But Elena and Damien knew. Sitting at that table, watching their daughter laugh, they both understood that they'd found something neither had been looking for. A real marriage, a real family, a real future. 6 months after that, Damien proposed properly. Not with a contract and a deadline, but with a ring he'd designed himself and a speech that made Elena cry. They renewed their vows in the same cathedral where it had all started, but this time the pews were filled with people who actually cared about them. Sarah stood as maid of honor, crying harder than Elena. Mrs. Kovacs sat in the front row looking proud. Rosie was the flower girl and took her job very seriously. And when Damien kissed his bride, really kissed her, not the polite forehead touch from before, the applause was genuine. After the ceremony, Elena stood in the same spot where she'd waited for Marcus and marveled at how different everything was. She'd been so broken that day, so terrified and lost. "What are you thinking about?" Damien asked, coming up behind her. "About how I stood here a year and a half ago thinking my life was over. And now? Now I know it was just beginning." She turned to face him, this man who'd walked into her disaster and offered her a second chance. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing something in me worth protecting, worth investing in, worth loving." "That was the easy part. You made yourself worth all those things. I just had the good sense to notice." Rosie ran over, dress already grass-stained, flowers falling out of her hair. "Can we do the cake now?" Elena laughed. "Yes, baby, we can do the cake now." They walked back to the reception together, hand in hand in hand. A family that had been forged in desperation but had grown into something beautiful through choice. Years later, when people asked Elena how she and Damien met, she'd smile and say they'd found each other at exactly the right time. She didn't mention the abandoned first wedding or the contract or the fact that they'd started as strangers bound by legal obligation. Because that wasn't the real story. The real story was about a woman who learned she was stronger than she knew. About a man who learned to let someone past his walls. About a little girl who gained a father who loved her without reservation. The real story was about two broken people who decided to stop running from connection and built something lasting instead. And when Rosie got older and asked how her parents fell in love, Elena would tell her the truth, that sometimes the best things in life come from the worst moments, and that choosing to be brave when you're terrified is the most important choice you can make. Damien established a foundation in Elena's name, focusing on supporting single mothers who needed financial assistance and resources. Elena ran it herself, using everything she'd learned about being powerless to help others find their own strength. Rosie grew up surrounded by love and opportunity, never doubting that she was wanted. When she turned 16, Damien legally adopted her, not because he had to, but because they both wanted it. And Elena, the woman who'd once stood trembling at an altar, abandoned and humiliated, learned that the person who saves you doesn't have to be someone else. Sometimes, with the right support and the courage to take a chance, you save yourself. The rest is just finding someone strong enough to stand beside you while you do. And Elena had found that person in the last place she'd expected to look, in a stranger with cold eyes who'd walked into her catastrophe and offered her not rescue, but partnership. That made all the difference.